What's up, everybody? Jeff in Control Robinson here with a very, very special Codex review. It's been a while. We have not done a Codex review in a little bit of time, but this is a great one to bust out and get excited about, so I'm pretty amped up. We've got the Genestealer Codex. This is one of the armies that I've been playing, well, I mean, since we've been able to in 7th edition, and I've been waiting eagerly for it to come over to 8th edition. So much so, in fact, that I've been playing some Index just to prepare for this Codex. So I'm pretty pumped. Let's just go ahead and set down the groundwork for what you're looking forward to here. This could be a long video, I can already tell you. I have an energy drink ready to go right next to me because I'm a little bit tired, been very busy, but this is going to be a long one. I've got a lot to say. We're going to cover it, cover to cover. Talk about it from the perspective of competitive gameplay, and of course, I'm just going to gush. This is an amazing codex, and well, anyways, we'll get to that in a minute. You might hear snoring in the background. That's my bulldog Barristan. You might hear licking or stuff. I can't turn him off. He is what he is. So if that really bothers you, I apologize. But otherwise, that's just kind of what comes to territory with my content. Otherwise, this is going to be my Codex review station, where we're going to be able to take a look at the Codex itself. You'll be able to hear me talk, and then hopefully this content will be something you're interested in. If it is, make sure and follow my YouTube channel, subscribe to it, I suppose, make some comments if you have any, and let me know what you think. I'm definitely involved and excited to hear what you guys have to say as well. So without further ado, let's get into the Codex itself. As a little bit of a preamble, I will say that I am, as of a few months ago, a part of the 40K balance team, actually. I'm a part of what we call ourselves the Mournival. It's a group of people outside of Games Workshop that help the people inside of Games Workshop come up with ideas and balance the codexes. So that's been a huge honor. It's a dream come true to actually work on the game that I've been loving for over 20 years. It's just an absolutely amazing privilege. That being said, this codex was worked on and talked about before my time on that team. So I did not have any say or input in this, and this was kind of really fresh to me. But because of my connections, pardon me, I've actually been able to handle the resources of this codex for a couple months now, which has been very difficult to have this at my disposal and not talk about it or play it openly. It's also actually made it hard to enjoy playing the Index because they're just getting so much more. So it was kind of a funny experience where I was so honored and happy to be handling the content, but at the same time had to keep it kind of a secret a little bit. So why I'm telling you this is not to brag, although if you take it that way, no, just kidding. But it means that I've played quite a few games with this codex. I have handled the units, I've read over their content, and I have actually spent more time with this codex than any other that I've reviewed. That's not to say I'm not going to make mistakes or talk about things and then be incorrect about it, but it is to say that I actually know a great deal of what I'm talking about with this, and I'm really excited about that. Okay. I think we should just dive right into it. So the way I want to handle this codex is I'm going to show off a bunch of the pictures. It's a beautiful codex, as per usual. They have really fun and awesome fluff. There's a ton of artwork in there. But then I want to get kind of right into the unit by unit. And I think what I will do, which is different from codex reviews in the past, is we'll talk about a unit, and then I'm actually going to flip over to its cost. I usually do the unit, then the cost, but I think that's a little bit discombobulating. So there's going to be some flipping around. I know most of this off the top of my head, but I will confirm and show, of course, in the codex itself. But I think that this will be a nice, much more systematic way of going through these and talking about their value. So let's just flip through some of this right off the bat. We are really zoomed in, but just keep in mind, this is not supposed to be a absolute picture-for-picture codex review. I think one of the cool things is that I have this set up to do that, to show you guys a lot of the artwork and pictures, but for the most part, it's a accompanying media, if you will. So again, the codex is just very cool about talking about the upbringings and where they come from, talking about even the different styles. One of the things I really enjoy about the fluff of the Genestealer cult is it's still quite human, despite their incredibly creepy origin, right? It's a Genestealer or Genestealers that make their way to a planet, and then one becomes the patriarch, and they begin the infestation through abduction and depositing of genes into the gene pool and stuff like that. It's like really messed up. But still, when you talk about these characters, they have a very human quality to them, but with like the tint of they're basically under the will and control of the patriarch, and then soon the Hive fleet that shows up. So yeah, it goes through each unit. Again, fantastic fluff. I really, really enjoy it. The Locust is really funny because actually, at first I was pretty unimpressed with his stat line and what he did, but the model is so dang cool. The fluff is so dang cool. And he is good, and there are ways to make him very useful that I'm basically going to have to write him into almost every one of my lists just because he's so cool. I'll get more specific. I'm going to be jumping all over the place a little bit. And there's the Kellermorph. This has been the hardest one for me to keep a secret for a while. This model had its picture leaked quite a while ago at this point in time, but well before, models started to be shown. And it's just amazing. It is so, so, so dang cool. And again, I love its link into the fluff of the Genestealer cult. It's literally a mutant that comes out during the setup for the uprising, if you will. And his sole purpose is to be a hero, to be like an icon, and to inspire people to rally around the Genestealer cult. And then, his rules kind of reflect that. It's just absolutely awesome. All right. So let's get to the front. Again, just flipping through all this. Beautiful, beautiful Codex. All right, so this is I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this because this is something that a lot of people have been talking about, and it's been a little bit difficult for them. I don't want to say to necessarily understand, but perhaps, to see the light, if you will, to kind of understand the power of this. Actually, I'm going to mess with the camera a little bit, which is dangerous to do. That's actually better, so I can show off more here. A little bit closer. Anyways, like I said, you're not supposed to see everything line by line per se. I just want you to get a better picture of what we're dealing with. So this is Cult Ambush. So this is something that's completely unique to the Genestealer cult. And there are basically two styles of this. There is the actual Cult Ambush. It's out of focus now. I'm messing everything up. Well, that's going to have to do it for now, guys. It's a little bit out of shot. It's going to be mostly my voice, and think of this as a visual aid. So if you are I'll just read it at first, and it's kind of confusing, so I'm going to then kind of break it down. During deployment, you can set up this unit in ambush instead of on the battlefield. If this unit has the infantry or biker keyword, you can either set up in ambush or underground instead of on the battlefield. So I'll even just stop there, because it's kind of funny, because underground to me is very, very different in the way it functions in this, but it's not even highlighted or treated as something kind of different. It's just like the same thing, only a different style. So when you set up something underground, it has to have infantry or biker keyword, which is fine. It basically only excludes the buggy, and then some, like allied in things like chimeras and stuff like that. I believe they do not. They don't have those keywords, so they can't do it. So that's fine. They can't just appear 9 inches away. The other style, the actual ambush, is you put down a blip marker in your own deployment zone. So for a lot of people, they're really upset about that. It meant that you can't be all up in your opponent's face turn 1. I get it. It was very powerful. It's something that we had. But I still really like this. This is very thematic, and it's very different. When you set up a blip marker, you don't have to say, this is my Nexos, or this is a unit of 10 neophytes. You just put down a blip marker. Now, what's kind of weird about that is that you do probably have to, you have to declare when things are underground, I would imagine, and you also have your units over there. So it's a little bit of mental work for you, because you have to kind of put down the appropriate number of blip marks for how many things you have. That being said, it is nice, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend to tell you that this is the most powerful thing in the world. This will totally confuse them, because there's really going to be the very obvious units that you're going to put underground, and then there's going to be a bunch of the extra stuff that you're going to just have as blips, and they're not going to be terribly shocking. Your opponent's not going to be like, oh my gosh, that blip was that? I had no idea. It's going to be mostly neophytes and support characters, and perhaps some, if you ally in some guard and that kind of thing. Sure, it can be those kind of things. The reason I don't mind the blips is because there is enough tomfoolery around there that you can set up some mind games. So if you put like a bunch of blips right up against the line on the front right side exposed, your opponent, as they're deploying, is going to respect that. Probably means you could be attacking from there or looking to be very aggressive. You can set up out of cover and make them think that they can take advantage of that. You can set stuff up in range of things that they have, or out of range, then move into range, etc., etc. But the really nice thing for this, for me, and the very obvious win here, is that your opponent, even in their movement phase, so if you're going second and they go first, they cannot come within 9 inches of a blip marker, and they can't destroy it. So you could put up some decoys in the front line, and then at the end of their movement phase, and it does say the end, that's when you reveal the blip markers of your own. But that's also when you can use some of your, like the Nexos, when he's revealed, he gets to move 1 for free, gets to just redeploy it. There's a stratagem to move 3 of them 12 inches. So you can do all kinds of stuff like push back things that otherwise want to be close, act as a screen, and then pull them back or put them in cover or put them out of line of sight. So there is some cool technique to do with that. It is just, think of it more as like just literally a leg up on what everyone else gets to do during their deployment. Again, it's not completely broken, whereas like they're just blip markers and they can't possibly shoot them, so you're invincible turn 1. That would be silly. Or if you could get out of your deployment zone and still block the 9 inches or too close, that's ridiculous. Or you come up within 9 inches and now you're a 2-inch charge. All those kind of things would probably be too strong, and you have to understand that while that would have been nice, it would not have been nice for our opponents, so we have to play kind here. That aside, the other kind of tomfoolery you can pull is there's a stratagem to have 4 additional blip markers added, and then they don't have to actually be real things. So again, this is all upside. There is no actual downside to this at all. It's just that people had their hopes and dreams a little bit higher. But I do think that, again, if we were moving around outside of our deployment, if we were all deep striking turn 1, that kind of stuff, it's putting the game in a direction where that's not what the development team wants for this game. So we're going to find a happy, healthy medium, and hopefully you guys can respect that. Underground is going to be where you see most of your meat and potatoes set up in this cult ambush. These are going to be your aberrants, your patriarchs, your kelomorphs. This is going to be your genestealers if you're doing that. It's just unabashedly a deep strike. But what's kind of cool about this, and one of the ways to view this, is that essentially your entire army gets deep strike, which is a very, very big deal. Keep in mind you do have to, in match play, respect the points on the table and in deep strike. This does not get around that. Some people were asking about the blips, as if that got around it or if that counted against you for points on the table or off. Nope, it counts as deployment for real. And one actually extra note to make about the blips, you don't count as moving until you move after being revealed, which is kind of cool, because again, there are some units and some abilities with stratagems and the Nexos to move those blip markers around. That doesn't count as a move. It's only after you're revealed that you then move that it does count as a move. Anyways, that aside, so 99% of the time you are 9 inches or more, well, you're more than 9 inches away if you come out from underground. But the reason I like this a lot, and we'll get into this more specifically, there's some key units in this codex that make that still pretty okay, still pretty powerful. So the Clamavis gives a 6-inch bubble of every unit gets +1 of the charge. That makes your charge now an 8-inch. There are things like the Vigilus Anointed Throng detachment. I believe, I actually have the book here. I shouldn't say I believe. I should just look it up and be sure. It's either the Warlord trait or the Relic, but I think it's the Warlord trait. Let me just make absolutely sure. Anointed Throng. Add 1 to charge rolls for your Warlord and friendly Anointed Throng units that are within 6 of your Warlord when the roll is made. Now, Anointed Throng is anything that has keyword Abominant and Aberrant. So, unfortunately, it's not like universal, which would probably be a little bit too ridiculous, but that +1 charge, in addition with the Clamavis, all of a sudden you're talking about a 7-inch charge. And that is very reliable and very strong. Of course, you have the 1 command point to re-roll it, and then I will get into the chapter tactics here in a minute, but there's actually other ways to get additional charges as well. So, Anointed Throng, Clamavis, your Aberrants and Abominants are making a 7-inch charge without anything else to aid them, and there is a stratagem where you basically get you get D6 inches towards your opponent as well. That's incredibly powerful. And you're going to start to see a theme here, too, where it's going to be a lot of auras that create a synergistic experience with this army that is very powerful if done right. But the counterpoint to that, of course, is as these units are taken out, they're out of position, something makes a charge, something else doesn't, the performance of the army starts to kind of deplete and even fall apart, which is, again, I think pretty fun, because thematically that is exactly what a Genestealer cult is. It is a string of leaders and specialty mutants coming up and leading the fray, and if you can take out those key characters, then all of a sudden the rebellion falls apart. So that is Underground. Like I said, it does have infantry and biker as the requirements for being able to do that. So you're not going to be able to take a transport like a Chimera, stick it with a bunch of stuff, pop up 9 inches away, and then get like 3 inches off of that and come out. Like none of that kind of stuff. There's no, as far as I can tell, anyways. There's no shenanigans going in that direction. So 6, 7, 8-inch charges, stratagem aiding in that, and then a couple of warlord traits, vigilance, that kind of thing. You're going to be getting much better charges, but your entire army is not going to get auto charges like it could have been in the past. So worth noting. They also, of course, have OBSEC if they have the Insurrectionist rule, I believe it's called, as per usual. So that's going to be your standard infantry, that kind of thing. There's no special Custodes treatment here or anything like that. A lot of unquestioning loyalty. I guess that's worth covering here as well. It's the same as the Index, so if you're familiar with it there, then you'll know it here. But essentially what it means is that as long as this rule is in place, a character on a 4+ can, if they fail their save, chuck off that wound and damage to a minion, if you will, a neophyte, or even all the way up to an aberrant. But unlike other armies, when you do that, there's no mortal wound. It's just slain. The model is slain. So that's in 99% of the cases not a big deal, because again, that's going to be your acolytes, your neophytes, something like that. But if you do have aberrants nearby and you want to shuck off that wound, you don't get the feeling of pain, and the model dies. So if it has both its wounds, it literally dies. It says the model is slain. Interesting. Yeah, it says a wound or mortal wound. Yeah. You can select one of those units and roll a d6 on a 4+. You do not inflict any damage on the character, but one model in the selected unit, your choice, is slain. Otherwise, the character suffers damage as normal. So it's before you roll the damage, which is not a big deal. That doesn't change anything at all. It just means if the guy's like, I have 2d6 damage, and they roll it, and then they get 12, you're like, well, it's too bad you rolled that, because now you're going to be really sad. Let's get into the units. So the Patriarch. Now, where did it have that rule, actually? That might be elsewhere in the Codex. I think it's later that it states this, but I'll just say it right now for the Patriarch. If you have a Patriarch in your list, it must be your Warlord. And I think that is really, really cool. Obviously, tactical flexibility here would have been nice for us hardcore players, but that's not what this army... I mean, that is what this army is about, but it's also... You're playing a game where we're spending time painting up our models. We name them sometimes, and we have stories in our head. And this is one of them. The Patriarch is the end-all, be-all of a Genestealer cult list, so it's got to be your Warlord. Honestly, I found in my list that this is totally fine. I've definitely had Genestealer cult lists without him, but he is a beast. And I'll go down his stat line and kind of talk about my experience with him. And it is a little bit it's okay. So he's got the Swift and Deadly, of course. He can advance and still charge. He has Brood Telepathy, so he's adding 1 to hit rolls for Genestealer cult units in the fight phase while they're within 6. He is the Living Idol. That's where it is. Oh, no, that's not it. Excuse me. He creates a Fearless Bubble 6 inches, 5+ invul. He is Movement 8, Weapon Skill 2, Bliss Skill 5, which doesn't matter, Strength 6, Tough 5, Wound 6, Attack 6, Leadership 10, Save 4+. So in cover, he gets a 3+. Keep that in mind because he does have the infantry keyword. And then he can take Familiars. Familiars are a little bit different in the Codex, by the way. I did not familiarize myself with the Index enough to know if they changed this or not, but they are actually little buddies. You can kill a Familiar. It has a stat line in and of itself. It does just go on to say, though, that if you kill a Familiar, it does not affect the leadership of the Patriarch or something like that. So if he has 2 Familiars, and you kill the 2 of them, and you have a whole bunch of leadership debuff stuff, there's no way to make the Patriarch fail leadership and die. He's a single model for those purposes. So he's got Monstrous Raiding Claws, which are the same. They're -3 or -5, I believe it is. No, it's -6 on a 6. And 3 damage flat or D3 damage, everything else. And he rerolls to wound. They're amazing. They're fantastic weapons. The Patriarch I have really, really enjoyed because he's a Psyker. He knows 2 powers. He can only deny and cast 1, but with a familiar, he can cast that 2nd power 1 time in addition. That's okay, because a lot of times you're doing Might from Beyond. You're not really smiting with him. You can, I guess, if it's like a really clutch situation. But Might from Beyond or Mass Hypnosis to turn off an Overwatch to make the -1 to hit, that kind of stuff, pretty powerful things. I will get into the Psychic tree in a little bit, but there are some amazing Psychic powers, and I want you guys, this is how much I love you. You ready for this? I'm going to share a dirty little secret. There is a gimmick you can do with the Patriarch that is absolutely incredible. Keep in mind, the Patriarch and, what is it called? Well, we'll get to it. A Psychic power that I'm not even going to name yet. We'll see. We'll have to just wait and see. I love the Patriarch. I think he should be in almost every one of your lists. The Fearless Bubble is a big deal. Genestealer Cult lists take a lot of infantry. Leadership is otherwise not mitigated. There's nobody else that's really creating that Fearless Bubble. There is, I mean, if you're taking like 20 neophytes, you know, you're going to lose a bunch. If you take 20 acolytes or 10 acolytes, their leadership is not super, super high. It's not bad, but it's not super high. He is one of the best ways to mitigate that. Another thing that you're going to see a lot of is a unit of 10 aberrants. I believe their leadership is 5, I want to say, maybe 6 or 7, but it is not good. So if you lose several of those guys, you're either paying 2 command points, or you're hoping to roll low, or you have a Patriarch nearby, which synergizes well with him as well. Other than that, he's just a huge damage dealer, and then with the ability to look out Sir, essentially, with Unquestioning Loyalty, you're talking about a guy that can have many, many more wounds. And one of my favorite things about this codex, and I'll talk about this when we get to that section, their chapter tactics, if you will, but their cult rules, the different cults have some incredible relics and some abilities. And the Patriarch is a character that does not have a name, so you can give it an amazing relic. Just to give you kind of an idea, I'm talking about a 7 wound, tough 6, 7 attack Patriarch that is doing 1 plus D3 damage or 4 damage on a 6. These are some of the things that you can do. And that's just the beginning. You can get him up to 8 or 9 attacks. You can get him up to strength 8. We're talking about a guy that can just about tear in half a knight. Obviously not in one swing, but not too far off. Pretty amazing. All right, so let's bring us over to the Magus. This is going to be someone that's in every one of your lists as well. This is your primary Psyker. It's the same as the Index, so I don't want to go and spend too much time on this. Movement 6, Weapon Skill 3, Blow Skill 3, Strength 3, Tough 3, Wounds 4, Attacks 3, Leadership 8, Save 5+. Again, that Unquestioning Loyalty is going to be where the survivability here, as well as the character rule. Don't let them get shot, because they will not last very long. A Magus knows... a Magus can attempt to manifest 1 psychic power and attempt to deny 1 psychic power. It knows the smite power and 2 psychic powers as well. So that's the kind of nice thing. They only do cast 1, both the Patriarch and the Magus, but they know 2 powers. So that is a little bit flexible because, again, the power tree, the psychic power tree for Genestealer Cult is fantastic. So you kind of want to know multiple powers. It has a spiritual leader rule. Each cult unit other than Psychers within 6 of the friendly cult Magus models at the start of your opponent's psychic phase can attempt to deny 1 psychic power that targets them during the phase as if they were themselves a Psyker. So gives out some denies. That's nice. In an army where you have a Magus or maybe 2, depending on how many detachments you took, and want to spend that, or a Patriarch. It's not the most psychic heavy army, but it's also, of course, not the least. It just gives more denies out there, which is just a very cool tool. It can take familiars as well, and that's about it. So it is just, again, a cheaper HQ, and it casts off some of these amazing powers. So it's just, those powers are things you're going to want to have. I don't have a whole lot to add to the Magus because it is the same as the Index, essentially, other than you're going to want to take it. And by the way, that female Magus model they're coming out with the release, incredible. It looks awesome. So just buy it and put it in your list quite happily. The Primus did experience some change from Index to Codex. So not in the stat line. Weapon Skill 2, Blow Skill 3, Movement 6, Strength 4, Tough 3, Wounds 5, Attacks 4, Leadership 9, Save 5+. The Needle Pistol gets a little bit of love, I believe. I did not think that it had this in the Index. It still wounds on a 2+, except for against vehicles or Titanic. But it does D3 damage. If I remember correctly, it did not do that in the Index, but maybe I'm completely wrong. Bone Sword's the same. It has a blast charge. All that stuff's the same, but it does experience some change down in its special abilities. So it still has the add 1 to hit rolls or attacks made by cult units in the fight phase whilst they're within 6 of any friendly Cult Primuses. So that's amazing, absolutely incredible. Nice way to get around. I mean, an aberrant unit hitting on 3s with power picks, that's cool. Them hitting on 2s is something incredibly different. And again, the Abominant with his gigantic hammer hitting on a 4, hitting on a 3, now we're cooking. Give him the relic one from Vigilus, he's hitting on a 2. So there's all, I mean, he's one of the most important characters in your list. You're going to have at least one, but I could see people taking multiple ones. And then he has Meticulous Planner. The first time this model is set up on the battlefield, select one enemy unit on the battlefield, reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by friendly Cult units that have the Cult Ambush ability whilst they are within 6 of this model when targeting the enemy unit. So the way this reads is that when he pops up a once per game, well, actually just it's when he pops up, so technically you could put him back into Cult Ambush and have him come out and do this again, but anyways, you pick a unit, and then shooting at that unit, you reroll 1s, but also you're targeting them in the assault phase, and it does not say a shooting attack, it just says reroll wound rolls of, it's a wound roll, excuse me, of 1 for attacks made by friendly Cult units that have the Cult Ambush ability will stay within 6 of this model when targeting the enemy unit. So as long as you're within 6, as long Barrison just crawled beneath me. He's scared of the green screen. As long as you're within 6 for when he first pops up that turn, you're going to reroll wound rolls of 1, which is quite useful. There are a lot of ways to reroll 1s in shooting and that kind of thing, but this gives you the reroll 1s to wound, and that's amazing. So again, that kind of a lot of synergy here with like your aberrants popping up and needing to drop a knight. They're wounding the knight most likely on a 5. There are ways, believe it or not, to get them to winning it on a 4. I don't think a 3 unless you take some of the other weapons. I'm talking power picks. It's their best loadout. But rerolling those 1s just ups that up quite a bit. It's a very, very good ability. But also, if you're going to take a more shooty Cult list, he's already essential, but there's just a lot of synergy there as well. Acolyte Icon Ward. Again, unchanged for the most part from the index. So same stat line, move 6, weapon skill 3, blue skill 3, strength 4, tough 3, wounds 4, attacks 4, leadership 8, save 5+. He has the Nexus of Devotion, which is that 6-up Feel No Pain to all units within 6. And then I think they had this as well, but the Bestial Devotion, reroll Bestial Vigor rolls of 1 for friendly Cult Aberrant models whilst they're within 6 inches of this model. So that's pretty sick. And I'm just going to preview this right now, but we'll talk more about it when we get to it. There is a stratagem to make the aberrants have, and abominant, because it's keyword aberrant, have a 4+ Feel No Pain, re-rolling 1s on a tough 4 at least, woo baby, model that is also getting a Feel No Pain. Well, that is the Feel No Pain, excuse me. So you're talking about a durability that we don't really see elsewhere in the game. I don't know of any other 4-up Feel No Pains. I'm sure there's at least a couple, and if there are, it's even harder to find reroll 1s, if at all. So we're talking about a very, very good banner. It's also a cheaper at HQ. We'll get to... Actually, I was supposed to be doing the points this whole time, wasn't I? My bad. I told you I was going to do something, then I just flat out didn't do it. The Patriarch comes in at 125 points. Let me just confirm. I guess I'll show you this because this is, you guys really want to see that. Yep, Patriarch's 125 points. Familiars are 12 points each. It's a bit pricey, by the way. I kind of feel like Familiars should be a little bit less. The offensive output they add is nothing. The wound thing is nothing really. That's more of a punishment, if anything at all. I mean, maybe I'm not seeing something. There is the relic, the Crouchling, which of course you will remember from 7th edition, and I think the index, but maybe not the index. I'll talk about that when we get to it. But if you do have remaining points, you're not sure what to do, a Familiar is nice. Casting a second power is really big with their powers. Anyways, 125 points, and then you can see the Primus is 72. And it goes on to say that that's without adding things. It has a bone sword, so it goes up to 75 points, but I believe the needle pistol and everything else is actually for 0 points. The Magus is 80 points, which is a little bit more on the pricey side, and I believe that is actually where it's at. Maybe it might be a little bit more. It might be 86. 4 staves. Nope, that's 0. I think it's actually just 80 points. It's mostly just that is going to be your caster, and it's also your cheap HQ. Because you only take So another thing worth noting, did it say it on this page? I guess I should say it as I'm talking about it now. I think this is something that was previewed, or maybe it wasn't. You can only take one type of each character in each detachment. So you only get the one Patriarch, the one Magus, and the one Primus in your Twisted Helix detachment. I mean, you could have multiple Twisted Helix detachments, but I guess what I mean is your battalion. So you're not going to have a Supreme detachment with like 3 Maguses. You can't do that. A lot of people I saw that I know in the competitive scene were kind of upset by that. I'm actually pretty okay with it. I think, again, it's in line with their fluff. They have specialist creatures and mutants that kind of show up in their birthing pools. And I literally mean like in their birthing cycles, not pool. So to kind of get away from that just to cater towards spamming, I like that they want you to have to either take multiple detachments or that one character is kind of a special, unique snowflake, if you will. And then I guess while we're here, well, you can see the Abominant got a point increase of 25 points. Well-deserved and still probably too cheap. 105 points for what we're going to talk about in a little bit here is insane. Anyways, I'll flip back and forth between this. But that is those 3 guys. And the Acolyte Icon Ward, like we said, is 53 points. Same as the Index. Pretty cool. A couple of lists that I wrote, it's not included in those lists, but I think I will be adding because I do feature Aberrants, and the ability to reroll that 1 is a big deal. Also, the HQ is nice, of course, and then there's a Relic Banner, of course, which I think is the same as in the Index. That one's good as well. Okay, let's get to probably my favorite character in this Codex. We've had him for a while. We got him before this major release. It's an awesome model, of course, but it's just so fun, you guys. It's just such a fun model. Same stat line. They didn't change anything. Movement 6, weapon skill 3, blow skill 6, strength 6, tough 5, wounds 5, attacks 3, leadership 8, save 5+. It does come with a little familiar. The familiar functions exactly the same. So this is exactly the same rules, by the way. They did not change anything. I'm just kind of reading it for thoroughity. That's a word. I'm making it up right now. It's not a word. He has exploding 6s to friendly aberrants within 6, which is himself as well. The Mindworm subtracts 1 from psychic tests taken from psychers that are within 12, except for Tyranids and Abominants are not affected. It's kind of funny that it says that. Anyways, he has the 5+ Feeling of Pain as well, and he gains D3 wounds back at the beginning of each movement phase. Actually, just says the beginning of your turn. Anyways, the hammer is -1 hit, but it keeps the minimum 3 damage up to D6 beyond that. So, again, you're looking at this and you're saying, well, all that happened was it gained 25 points in cost. He was a steal at 80. Let's just be honest with you. But now he's incredible. So at strength 6, he goes up to strength 12 with the hammer, -3, and like we said, the pretty darn good damage. He's also a force multiplier. But there are so many ways to take this guy and go to crazy, crazy, crazy places. I think you've heard the rumor, and we'll get to the section to cover it, but I want to tease it out right now. My favorite cult is the Twisted Helix. It gives +2 to advance rolls, which is awesome for Genestealers, but more importantly, it gives +1 strength to everyone. So all of a sudden, the Abominant is actually strength 7. In and of itself, not the biggest of deals. You're now strength 14 with the hammer. That's cool, I suppose. But if you cast Might from Beyond on him, you give him the Biophagus upgrade, and you get strength, or attacks, or toughness, to be honest with you. And then what if I told you he's a character, so there's multiple ways to get him +1 attack, +1 strength, +2 attacks, +1 toughness. And then even after all of that, there's a relic in the Vigilus book, not the Anointed Throng one, the other one, where a character can carry a vial and it gives the blessing to somebody else, him. Ladies and gentlemen, the Abominant can get up to somewhere in the ballpark of strength 10 or 11, which is completely, of course, useless, but you double that to 22. And I'll tell you what, it gets weird math. Let's say you don't double it after adding. He still gets to strength 17, or 18 actually. So he can still wound a Porphyrian Knight on a 2. He can get up to 7 or 8 attacks if you really want to go crazy about it. He can get up to 6, 7 wounds. He can get up to toughness 6. You can take this mutant monstrosity and you can make it into the stuff of legends, the kind of thing that we don't have in this game. Imagine 6 or 7 attacks hitting on 2s, -4, d6 damage with a minimum of 3, rerolling 1s if you want to, because you nominated them with a Primus. Rerolling 1s to hit. No, not to hit, actually. I don't think there's any way to do that. But hitting on 2s. You can actually solo shot a knight quite easily. The knight just flat out doesn't get a save unless they gave it the 2-up armor, in which case it's getting a 6-up, or they gave it the Sanctuary 5-up invul, in which case only half the attacks are getting through, but still. And that's just the Abominant by himself. And then what if I told you there's a Twisted Helix Stratagem, the one unique to him, where he gets to fight again, or Aberrants get to fight again for 3 command points. Now, is all of this necessary? No, but it's sterile, and I like the taste. It's just fun. It's just absolutely fun, and this is the kind of thing that's going to be rife throughout this codex. So I jumped all over the place here a little bit, but what I'm trying to tell you is that what I probably don't need to tell you is that every one of your lists should have an Abominant. Even if for some reason you're not taking Aberrants, throw the Abominant in there. He is another beat stick that will just show up behind a line of soldiers, and he will pummel something into the ground. But you should probably take Aberrants. All right. Let's talk about the Jackal Alphys here. And I'm going to crack open my energy drink because I'm already feeling it. Okay. The Jackal Alphys is a character that kind of leads the biker dudes and dudettes. Movement 14, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 2, strength 3, tough 4, wounds 5, attacks 3, leadership 8, save 5+. They come with a Jackal sniper rifle, auto pistol, and blasting charge. The Jackal sniper rifle is your standard sniper rifle at range 36, strength 4, but -2 and d3 damage, which is all nice. Of course, you can target characters, and on a wound roll of a 6, they take 1 mortal wound as well. They have skilled outrider, which all the bikes do, which is subtract 1 to hit them. And then this Jackal Alphys has a pretty cool rule, priority target sighted. At the start of your shooting phase, select an enemy unit that is visible to and within 36 inches of this model. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Colt units that target that enemy unit. Will stay within 6 of this model, or 12 if they are friendly Colt biker units. And they can only be selected by 1. So if you get like several Jackals, you're not somehow buffing it up to an incredible, +3 or 2 hits or something like that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. The Jackal Alphys has some utility here and is somewhat interesting in a shooty Genestealer Cult list. It will run you 70 points, and nothing else costs anything if I'm not mistaken. It's fairly hardy in that it's tough 4 with 5 wounds. It's a character. It flies around, but it's not that good in close combat. It's a single sniper rifle shot, which is okay, but paying 70 points for that, we do have access to other snipers. I'll talk about that later. So basically, you boil this character down to it is for the priority target sighted, and +1 to hit for shooting is really, really nice. Your neophytes can put out a tremendous amount of firepower. You have the Dune Buggies. I don't know why I'm always blanking on the name of it. It's a gorgeous model. We'll get to it in a second. They have some pretty decent shooting, so +1 hit there is okay. But remember, most of your shooting in this list starts off at ballistic skill 4, so you're getting to ballistic skill 3, and there's no other. I don't believe there's other ways to improve upon that. If the Kellamorph kills someone, you get to reroll 1s to hit. So at best, I believe you're basically hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, which is okay. But now you're talking about several stages of checks against that, and you took a Jackal Alphys just to do that. Now again, I will remind you, even hitting on 4s, you're putting out a lot of firepower, so that's okay. But this army is not really a shooty army. It definitely has that, but most of the shooty is either a tremendous amount of small arms fire that's like strength 3, or it's hand flamers, that kind of stuff, which doesn't really matter. Or it's fairly strong shots, but a lot of those are D3 shots, and then again hitting on 4s or 3s. I guess the point I'm trying to make is you should not design a Genestealer Cult list around being super accurate and hitting really hard in the shooting phase, because 99% of the chassis for that shooting is tough 3 models with a 5-up save, or very light vehicles that if they actually get hit pretty much explode, because they otherwise are, it's a rock grinder, which is okay, but it's 10 wounds. Or it's the Dune Buggy, which is again okay, but it's got a 4-up save and it's tough 5. Like, you should not design a list around the synergy of the Jackal Alphys and some of these other things that can happen to make you shooty. That's not to say you don't take these things, because shooting is still nice. And this is where I'm going to kind of back it up a little bit. You need to clear chafe with a Genestealer Cult list. You do not want to be dropping aberrants in with a plan of they're going to be charging 5 scouts their first go, and then after that, hopefully they make their charge into whatever the heck is behind that. Because very often, the teeth of this list, while more diverse than other lists, it's also not super, super durable. And you will probably lose them. So we'll talk about ways to get around that when we get to the strategy part of this codex. Then we have Acolyte Hybrids. And I think this, to me, might be the best news one of the best news you guys should get in this codex. I think they're amazing models. I think they're so fun. And I think they're really, really good. But the index, they were held back. They were held back by the fact that they were 11 points per model. Take a look at that right there. 7 points a model. 11 was too much. Don't tell GW I said this, but 7 might be too little. They are only just a tough 3 model with a 5-up save, so they go down like a guardsman. But man, do they hit so differently. Weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 4, strength 4, tough 3, like I said, 1 wound, 2 attack space, leadership 7, 8 with their sergeant, so to speak. They come with an auto pistol and a cultist knife and rending claws. But pretty inexpensively, you can transform this unit into a couple of different things. For 1 point per model, you can give everyone a hand flamer. So you can have a unit of 20 Acolyte Hybrids that at 8 points per model have a hand flamer. That's pistol D6, range 6, strength 3, damage 1. None of that should absolutely electrify you, but 20 D6 will kill certainly just about anything tough 3 and below it that they hit. 10, 20 guys, I don't care, they're gone. They're not going to be making that many 4-ups, 5-ups, maybe even 3-ups. If not, then 3-ups, they might survive, but a lot of them will die. Now, I'm not trying to look at this and say this is the new meta. You should be running 60 Acolyte Hybrids, and they should all have hand flamers, and then just call it a day. But I am telling you that this is an interesting idea and something you should consider. Otherwise, they have rending attacks on a 6. They're -4. They have 2 attacks, but they also get to make 1 additional attack with their cultist knife, which means they functionally have 3 attacks. It's just that one of them is not rending, but it's otherwise still strength 4, damage 1. So it's pretty darn cool, considering the model is, again, 7 points. But what I really like about this unit is that for every 5 models, 2 Acolyte Hybrids can take a special weapon. And these got changed around a little bit. They got changed around, I believe, a little bit. I don't know enough about them. Stop. I don't know enough about them to tell you the difference, but I can tell you that they're pretty darn good. The Heavy Rock Saw, which is the most inexpensive version, is strength ×2, -4, 2 damage flat. And notice how next to that, it doesn't say anything about minus to hit or anything. So you're talking about a little dude that's making 2 attacks at strength 8, -4, 2 damage. Hitting on 3s. And if you put a banner in the unit, they're rerolling 1s to hit, which you should. It's only 10 points. Especially if you take a big unit. Maybe not a smaller one. But this is this is very reminiscent of 7th edition, where these little units could just show up, and if they get on top of something, they're going to drag it down to hell. After that, you have things like the Heavy Rock Drill, which is strength ×2, -3, 1 damage. But you do the 2+ thing for mortal wounds. So on a 2+ there's mortal wound, 3+, and then 4+, so on and so forth. So that's kind of cool too. That's again an interesting way of thinking about it, where it kind of like just sticks the drill into the side of a knight's leg and kind of gets through it. Heavy Rock Cutter. This is strength times 2, minus 4 d3 damage. Roll a d6 each time a model other than a vehicle suffers damage from this weapon. If you roll higher than the model's remaining number of wounds, it is instantly slain. When attacking with this weapon, you must subtract 1 from the hit roll. So you're hitting on 4s, but this is an incredible... I always thought this was kind of funny because it does d3 damage, so... it's going to have that funny situation where, you know, you get a big Primarch or something down to its final wounds, and then you roll that 5 or 6, and it actually does kill it. Or if you hit a guards, you know, a guardsman, it's just a nice finisher is I guess the way I'm trying to describe it. A lot of times with annoying characters that survive with 1 or 2 wounds, this is a pretty darn good way to mitigate that issue. It is more expensive. We'll talk about that in the war gear. I'm not going to flip back and forth all over the place for that. I personally always take the heavy rock saws. They're just really reliable, and I think they're only 10 points per model in addition. Maybe they were 15. We'll take a look. Just remember to you know, make that mental note. But that's what I ended up going with. Now, you can take lash whips and bone swords. You can take yeah, you can take that. I almost completely ignore it. The thing is that when you die, you get the swing, is what they change it to. You're paying for that? Nah, that's okay. It's -2, 1 damage, so it's got a little bit extra rend. I don't think so, guys. I mean, if you're playing some games in your garage and you're like, that Jeff guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, sure, you can go for it. One thing that's interesting here, though, is that they all do have blasting charges, which is grenade, d6, strength 3, damage 1. Just kind of keep that in mind for Overwatch and stuff like that. It's better than just shooting with your auto pistol. But you can take demolition charges. And I believe it's for every 5. Let me confirm. For every 5 miles unit up to 2. Yeah, so it's 2 out of every 5. Demolition charge is range 6, d6, strength 8, -3, d3 damage. And you can only use it once per battle, but it's only 5 points. So that's pretty amazing. It does take up the slot of special weapons, so you can't hold a demolition charge and a rock saw on the same model, obviously. But it's worth considering a couple of these guys, because there's a stratagem, I believe it's called Lying in Wait. We'll get to the stratagems, you know, later. But you just appear 3 inches away from your opponent. You cannot charge, but you're 3 inches away. So this unit of 20 acolytes can all of a sudden put out, you know, fluctuating numbers depending on what you want. It could be 20 hand flamers if you want, or it could be 15 hand flamers and 5 demolition charges. And it, you know, -3, d3 damage, strength 8. It's not going to kill a knight, obviously, but it's going to put a dent into something. And again, you can't charge, so you have to be kind of curious about this. Probably threat saturation, that kind of thing. I'd almost always want them in cover as well, because again, with just a 5-up save. So it's a little bit peculiar. I think the best way to use this would have been something like, you know, a backfield objective that doesn't have a whole lot of threats nearby. These guys can show up, delete what was holding that, and then either be on it or next turn be on it. But do not put your acolytes anywhere near trouble, basically at all. They're very inexpensive, but like I said, they literally die like guardsmen. In fact, they might die worse than guardsmen because they don't have as many defensive... guardsmen at least have take cover, I believe, which is a +1 to your save. So they don't have, there's only one stratagem that can basically make them more survivable, and it's a... we'll get to it, but it's got some hoops that you got to jump through, and even then it's not a guarantee, because if they're just the closest, they just die. So they are... I mean, the phrase that you want to use is glass cannon, but it's obviously a little bit less than that, because it's kind of cool that they're a cannon at all. They're our basic troops, and they're very, very cheap. But again, I'm just cautioning you, before you go crazy on a unit of 20 guys having like 8 special weapons and the unit bloats up to 200 some odd points, don't do that. Keep them cheap, keep them inexpensive, play them cagey. They hit hard. Whatever infantry unit they're hitting, they're going to go down. They're going to kill them. Put the banner in them, and then I personally put a saw or 2 in there and maybe a demolition charge, but even that, probably not. The hand flamer thing is interesting, though. I would consider taking a unit of that, because again, it's just 8 points per model. That's 160 points for 20 of them. And that's a big block of troops anyways, so it's interesting to think about. The other basic infantry here is, of course, the Neophyte Hybrid. They also did not change from the index. They're 5 points per model. Same stat line. They carry auto guns, auto pistols, shotguns, that kind of stuff. What I really like about them in the Codex, of course, is that they, well, they benefit from all the cult rules, if you will. But all of a sudden, those special weapons start to make a little bit more sense because we have more ways to get them hitting on +1, rerolling ones, shooting twice, maybe. I would almost never do that with these guys, but whatever. You can put flamers in that unit as well, and this unit can show up 3 inches away from something. This almost makes more sense than the Acolytes because they are 2 points per model cheaper. They all have last guns, which are Rapid Fire 2, or Rapid Fire 1, excuse me, or auto guns. So that's kind of cool. And then you can give them other guns too. Like they could have shotguns if you really wanted to. Or, you know, a couple of flamers and a couple of mining lasers, that kind of a thing. So all of a sudden they will delete a scout unit or rangers or something like that, and then take over that spot. And that's almost purely how you're going to use that. The 3-inch thing, the 3-inch stratagem is otherwise, I think, I mean, it's situational, but there's just not a shooting unit in this Codex where it's like, you know, if it's like the Custodies, like imagine just you show up 3 inches away. There's a whole bunch of units in the Custody Codex where it's like, well, they're dead, they're obliterated, they're in trouble. Neophytes are bread and butter. I love them. They're really, really great. Like I said, the pure DACA they can put out is nice. I wouldn't put the banner in there. They can take a 10-point banner as well to reroll ones to hit in the fighting phase. Nah. These guys are going to help you fill out a battalion, and they're going to be your chafe clearers, and they're going to be your objective sitters. There is not going to be any argument coming out from me that it's like, well, with this stratagem and this one and this cult, they're hitting 80 times at strength 5. Like, no, nothing like that. So if you were getting excited about it, don't. Then we have Brood Brothers Infantry Squad. These are guardsmen. They are guardsmen. The Codex does specify, though, that they don't benefit from any... Like, if you take an Astra Militarum ally, they don't get Cadian, they don't get Catachan, nothing like that. You don't get any named characters. And it actually even goes on to say that you have the command points you get from that detachment. That's for the Astra Militarum stuff. Brood Brothers... It gets a little bit confusing, honestly. I was actually kind of with this part gonna wait. Well, not wait necessarily, but not talk about it as much because even I consider myself a pretty smart Warhammer guy, but there's some rules and sometimes the way things interact that I just wait and see what like everyone else says, and then I'm like, okay, that's how I'll do it. So I guess I'll just say proceed with caution. Brood Brothers. Several Genestealer cult units have the Brood Brothers keyword. These units can be included in a Genestealer cult's detachment without preventing other units in the detachment from gaining a cult creed. Note, however, that Brood Brothers do not themselves benefit from any cult creed. In addition, to represent Astra Militarum forces that have been subverted, you can include Astra Militarum units and Genestealer cult units in the same match play army, even though these units do not have any faction keywords in common. In such cases, ignore the Astra Militarum units when choosing army's faction. If your army is Battleforged, you can only include one Astra Militarum detachment, one in which every unit has the Astra Militarum keyword. In your army, for each Genestealer cult's detachment in that army, you cannot include Astra Militarum named characters in these detachments, and these detachments cannot be specialist detachments. So no Emperor's Wrath. These Astra Militarum detachments are then known as Brood Brother detachments, and every unit in them that has the Regiment or Militarum Tempestus keyword must replace it in every instance on its data sheet with Brood Brothers. If a unit does not have either of these keywords, it simply gains the Brood Brothers keyword. Brood Brother detachments do not gain any of the detachment abilities listed in Codex Astra Militarum, such as regimental doctrines, nor can they use any regiment-specific stratagems, orders, etc. Furthermore, infantry models in Brood Brother detachments increase their leadership characters by 1, which is nice, and they gain the unquestioning loyalty ability. Units in Brood Brother detachments do not gain the Cult Ambush ability. Your Warlord cannot be from a Brood Brothers detachment, and you cannot give any relics to Brood Brothers characters. In addition, the command benefits of all Brood Brothers detachments included in your army in this way are halved. rounding up. This reflects, so 5 goes down to 2 up to 3, or 2.5 up to 3. It's to represent them being used in a costly time and stuff. So literally, if you take an Astra Militarum detachment, as I read that, let's say you take a battalion, it would be 5 command points, but it actually goes down to 2.5 round up to 3. They get no doctrines. They don't. I mean, it's kind of punishing. It's a little bit punishing. So these guys, for me, it is still your cheapest. It's actually not. Wait, is it? Yeah, it's more expensive by 5 points. You can take 5 acolytes for 35 points. That's your cheapest troop choice, but it's also, you know, it's like 5 guardsmen, like I said. Or you can take a unit of 10 Brood Brothers, which is 40 points, just like guardsmen. Neophytes are 5 points per model, so it would have been 50 points for just 10 of those guys. Interesting. Stop. Embarrassing. I think that you'll find in the Codex that with the punishments and with the nerf of they're just missing out on all the Astra Militarum stuff, you will not see this as much as we did in the past. They are inexpensive, but not so much more so that from neophytes or acolytes that it like makes clear sense that you take them over others. Their shooting is guardsman shooting minus a lot of the buffs that makes guardsman shooting okay. It is a way to shoehorn in things like wyverns, like basilisks. It still is that kind of way to get those things into your list if you think that it's super necessary. But like I said, it's not even your most inexpensive battalion anymore. And I'll get to this later, you're going to want to take multiple battalions of straight Genestealer cult. They just have some amazing cult tactics and stratagems and relics and abilities that I think that's going to be the way you're going to want to do it. But they also have so many characters, you're going to have to spread them out basically too. So I'd love it if you guys disagree with me and tell me what you think about this part of the Codex. For me personally, when I was reading Brood Brothers, I had a little bit of a furrowed brow and scrunched face because I thought it was a little bit heavy-handed. Because I always actually really enjoyed that this was basically the way to get Tyranids, Genestealer Cult, and Astra Militarum in the same list, which created this really ugly hodgepodge thing, but that is exactly what they are, which is like really cool. So maybe a lot of you will still take this, and like I said, let me know why I'm wrong here. Then we get to, and this is troops, by the way, but now we're in the elites. Hybrid Metamorphs. There's a lot of memes floating around of people are saying, make these guys good, please. And I hear you. I can tell you that they are at least better. Hybrid Metamorphs are 9 points per model. And then let's get to some of the war gear because it's actually really relevant to them. I thought I could find it. Where is it? Metamorph. Okay, they all start with M. My bad. Metamorph Talon is 1 point. Metamorph Whip is 0. Metamorph Claw is 4 points, so it's your 3 options there. 1 point, 4 point, not a big deal, but all of a sudden you're getting to 13 points per model on something that's toughness is 3 with a 5-up save. I would tell you that that's getting to pretty dangerous territory, especially considering that the Metamorph is, again, an elite, so you're not filling out a battalion with it. It's not kind of getting that double roll, which we're spoiled. There's a lot of great infantry in 8th edition and in this Codex, so we're kind of accustomed to fantastic troops that also fill out battalions and get us those command points. So Hybrid Metamorphs are in a tough spot in that way for me. They're gorgeous models. They, of course, still have the same stat line. They still have the banner that can get them to reroll 1s. And I'm sure you guys can hear the train. It's another part of life here in the Bay Area. They can take hand flamers. They come with the auto pistol. The Metamorph Claw is strength +2, -1, rend 1 damage. The Talon is... It can make 1 additional attack, and you add 1 to hit rolls with that, so they're hitting on 2s. And the Metamorph Whip is, if they're slain, they still get to swing. Otherwise, it's exactly their same stat line. So, to be brutally honest, when I look at this, I personally can't really think of a list where I would ever include these guys. putting them at strength 6, -1 damage. They do have 3 attacks base, so that's pretty cool. You know, 3 strength 6, -1 damage attacks is nice. But I look at that and I say that's pretty good at killing Space Marines, not just about anything else. Maybe you look at it and say it's good against like rhinos and guard vehicles, but again, they're outperformed by everything else. I still think Acolytes are just as good with a rending attack, so on a 6 they're not getting a save. You put a couple of saws in there, which points-wise actually makes more sense over the course of the entire unit. And then the liability of this unit dying is exactly the same as a unit of Acolytes dying, except the Acolytes probably cost less and hit similarly hard, and they're a troop choice. So I own like 40 or 50, I own like 30 or 40 Metamorphs. I'm going to use them in my leagues, I'm going to use them in my beer pretzel games, but I probably don't think that they serve much of a purpose in any kind of competitive list. So this page is basically the teeth page. Aberrants. And this is great news. From Index to Codex, if I'm not mistaken. Aberrants now cost 16 points per model, which might have been similar. But their power pick, for instance, went down to 9 points. So that's 25 points per model on a tough 4, 2 wound, 5 up save, 5 up feel no pain model that, like I said earlier, can pretty reliably and easily get a 7-inch charge coming out of underground. And they put a hurting down. You put an abominant in the nearby vicinity, and they have exploding 6s. You put a Primus in there, they're hitting on 2s, -2 D3 damage. In a Twisted Helix attachment, they're all strength 6. But then again, you cast Might from Beyond on them, and not only does that give them all more attacks, but now they're strength 7. And then if you do take a Biophagist, you can do things like increase their strength by another one, and now they're all strength 8. Hitting on 2s. Maybe rerolling 1s to wound, and doing D3 damage with each attack, and then also a Rending Claw attack per model as well. So you're talking about 4 or 5 attacks per model, with one of them being a Rending Claw. The sky is the limit with these guys, and then you can make them very durable by at the beginning of your turn saying that you're going to spend 2 command points to make them have a 4-up Feel No Pain, and if they're near the banner, rerolling 1s. Raise the Roof. One of my absolute favorite units. Just model-wise, they're incredible. They always catch people off guard with their durability. I found in my games, because of what they look like, because of how they hit, very often people are going to target them with multi-damage, bigger weapons. And that is actually precisely the trap that you want for the most part. Even D6 weapons, they roll a 3 on it. Well, that gets changed to a 2 because they reduce all damage by 1. You make 1 feel no pain, and now that model's not dead. Or if they have 2 damage weapons or 3 damage weapons or D3, all that kind of stuff, these guys eat that up in a big, big way. But at only tough 4 with a 5-up save, what I find is obviously their natural predator would be like a huge amount of DACA, Storm Ravens, some Custodies, that kind of stuff, Hurricane Bolters. They will put these guys down fairly inexpensively. So then you got to do kind of tricksy stuff, like make sure that they're all in cover. So now they have a 4-up save. That's a nice way to do that. Again, the Feel No Pain goes a long ways in doing that, in keeping them alive, that is. And then there is a stratagem, which we'll talk about when we get to it, where this unit is like one of the ones that you're really going to want to use it on, and it's pretty incredible. But Aberrants, like I said, are the bread and butter. For the Hypermorph, the Sergeant, I always give him the improvised weapon, the heavy improvised weapon that puts him at strength 10, -1, 2 damage, and he makes 2 hit rolls with each. So it ends up being 6 attacks with that. And again, in Twisted Helix, he's actually strength 12, so which doesn't really change that much. This unit is the absolute mulcher, and then it can take a licking back, which is really nice. Unless you get their strength way up there, they're not going to wreck a knight very well. The knight still gets like a 5-up save, for instance, against their attacks, and they're only wounding on 5, so I know the natural inclination is to be like, well, I'm going to throw it at a knight and probably kill it in one go, right? Maybe, maybe not, depending on how you roll. But if you can get these buffs up with, again, Might from Beyond and that kind of stuff, and you're starting to wound on 4s, you're rerolling 1s because you picked them with a Primus ability, that kind of stuff, now you are dropping major targets. I like Aberrants as like the most distraction unit you can see. You throw them right in the thick of things, murderate a unit, and then jump into another one, knowing that you can't swing at them, but they swing back at you, or declare them, and then use a Twisted Helix Stratagem to actually fight again. Now you're killing 2 units. But they can take the damage back, which is really nice. If you're tagging things in the assault phase, and then they have to fall back, and they're not, depending on the list, of course, and their abilities, they're not shooting or they're not charging, but they're going to try to take care of the Aberrants. And the nice thing about an Aberrant unit, too, is if you come in with like 9 or 10 strong, and you lose 4 or 5, 4 Aberrants can still wreck a lot of units and still be a big pain in the butt. So there are units of things where they're like fantastic at 10, and then almost useless at 3 or 4. That is not the case with Aberrants, I find. Obviously, the more the merrier, but they're still pretty okay in lower numbers. And then keep the Abominant nearby, too. You roll a lot of 6s to hit, especially with power picks, because you're doing a lot of swings. And you're just getting more hits off of that. And then we are talking about killing a knight, like I was saying. Then there's the Piercing Genestealers. These are 15 points per model, as per what was, well, a long time ago at this point, FAQ'd in the index. Their stats are exactly the same. I will not tell you about Genestealers at this point in time, because you should know about Genestealers, especially if you're watching this Codex review. At 15 points a model, and with how fast they are, I think they're amazing. In the Twisted Helix Cult Detachment, they get +2 to advance. So you're moving 8 inches, you roll a d6, let's say you get a 5 or 6. That is 16-inch movement and still being able to assault. And then there are other ways to get additional to that. So if you were next to a Clamavus, the Clamavus is +1 to your advance as well, and +1 to your charge. So you're now all of a sudden moving 17 inches and getting a +1 to your charge as well. So these guys, literally, a big part of the reason why they're in almost all of my lists isn't for their ferocious hit like a truck, even though they do. It's more because they just get around the table. They just kill the targets that they will, and they fly all over the place. Keep them near the Patriarch so they're fearless, and you are good to go. And now we get into a few more of the characters. The Clamavus. The Clamavus is an absolute auto-take in all of your Genestealer cult lists. As we were speaking, you were imagining a list. It didn't include a Clamavus. This is me reaching through the interwebs, slapping you upside the head gently and lovingly and saying, no, you're taking a Clamavus. The Clamavus is a elite, which is unfortunate that it doesn't fill up a more better slot, if you will, but it's 55 points, and that's it. There's nothing that you add to it. What does the Clamavus do? So it's got a Guardsman stat line, movement 6, weapon skill 3, bliss skill 3, strength 3, tough 3, 4 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 8, save 5+, and it's got an auto pistol. I don't know why it has 3 attacks. You're never doing it, whatever. I think the universal conversation everyone's going to have at this point in time is like, I don't know, it's never been in combat. And they'll look and they'll be like, 3 attacks? It's just punching you strength 3. It's literally just slapping you in the face, so whatever. It has the Scrambler array. Enemy units that are set up on the battlefield as reinforcements cannot be set up within 12 of this model. In addition, at the start of your shooting phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit that is within 6 of any Clamavus from your army. On a 6, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So the mortal wound thing, who cares? Holy cow. 6 inches on a 6, you take 1 mortal wound. There's going to be some final table that's decided by the Clamavus sniping the final guardsman off an objective, and the entire place will go crazy, and Heidi Klum will descend from her helicopter and be like, I love Warhammer. It's going to be weird, but it'll happen. The cannot be set up within 12 inches ability is really cool. Because keep in mind, your Clamavus is going to want to be in the thick of things, and I'll talk about why with its second aura ability. But this is huge. A lot of times, people are countercharging you. They're jumping boys in the area. They've got a smash captain. 12 inches means that you are not going to be going anywhere near this kind of critical point of the battlefield. It's not game-changing, and it's definitely one of those... It's going to be regarded every time as like, oh, it's got this thing. Yes, it's got that thing, and that's really cool. So... don't write home about it necessarily, but at the same time, it's really cool. But this is the big one. Proclamator Hailer. Add 1 to the leadership characteristic of a cult unit while they're within 6 of any friendly cult clamavus. In addition, add 1 to advance and charge rolls for units that are within 6 of any friendly clamavus unit when roll is made. The +1 to charge is gigantic. This is, a huge part of the offense of our army is coming out of underground 9 inches away and wanting to make a charge. If you make that to an 8-inch charge, it's big. It's a big deal. So that's why this character, and it's a 6-inch aura, by the way. So it's every unit within 6. You just string a couple guys back to within 6 of the clamavus, and all of a sudden you're making that 8-inch charge as opposed to a 9. It's a huge force multiplier. The +1 advance is nice, but that's more of like an auxiliary thing. Like that's cool for Genestealers, but that's more for coming off of, having already arrived or moving elsewhere on the table. It's just a nice little extra added something. +1 leadership. Jeff, I don't care about +1 leadership. That's not a big deal. Keep that in mind for later when I talk about my combo. So that's the Clamavus. The Locos. An amazingly cool model. Really, really cool model. This is the cloaked guy with the swords on his back, kind of peeking out from, he's the shield, he's the bodyguard, essentially. Stat line is movement 6, weapon skill 2, bliss skill 3, strength 4, toughness 3, wounds 4, attacks 4, leadership 8, save 5+. He has a 5++ invul save. He always swings first unless a similar ability, in which case you go with the player's turn. So that's nice. Not super amazing, but nice. Sudden strike, he can do a 6-inch heroic intervention, and he can move towards characters with this ability, which is a funny stipulation because, well, anyways, it's nice. Then he has the unquestioning bodyguard, so it's basically unquestioning loyalty, except instead of just straight up killing him, he takes a mortal wound. So if a character near him, and I think it's a 2+, yeah, it's on a 2+. So if you're shooting at a patriarch, you do a couple of wounds to him, and you don't want to throw away a couple of models, this guy can step forward and say, I got you. And on a 2+, he just takes a mortal wound. And with 4 wounds and as a character, that's pretty nice. It's what I like about him is cost-wise, he's not a big deal if I remember correctly. I want to say 40. What was it? Yeah, it's 40 points. And then his damage output's pretty okay. He's got the Locos blades, which are -3, 1 damage, but they're 2 damage if you made a charge, were charged, or performed a heroic intervention. 2 damage, 4 attacks, -3, that kills stuff. Weapon skill 2, and strength 4 is a nice touch as well because he's a small guy, so you could have seen him at strength 3, but he's got the Genestealer muscle stuff kind of coursing through him. So that's a pretty good stat line. There should be none of you overclocking your brain being like, Jeff, what if I take 3 of them in 3 different detachments? And then, no, probably not. But 1 in your list, yeah. The bodyguard ability is really nice. It protects against, like, our army's the worst for the missile from the Knights. But anyways, it's pretty good. He also has the Neurotraumal Rod. Subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of any unit while they're within 6 of enemy locuses. Again, -1 leadership, not the coolest thing in the whole world, but we're going to talk about leadership later. And also -1 is still pretty cool because, again, that can be like, the final model in a unit running away, that kind of stuff. So it's not bad. And that brings us to the Sanctus. Also a cool model. And I'll tell you what, I'm just going to say it right off the bat. He has a rifle he can take. I don't know why any of the pictures, all the pictures they've shown, this must be the one Sanctus that Games Workshop painted because, I read a lot online and stuff. People are like, does someone said he can take a rifle? Yeah, and they never show it. But he can. In fact, I would tell you he probably should. Move 6, weapon skill 2, bliss skill 2, strength 3, tough 3, wounds 4, attacks 4, leadership 8, save 5+. So a very similar stat line. He has a camo cloak, so he gets 2 more to his save in cover. He has a soul sight familiar, so enemies that are shot at by him do not get cover. He's a cult assassin, which just basically means he cannot take any warlord trait ever, but it also means he can do the perfect ambush stratagem for 0 command points, as opposed to 3, which is what it normally costs. The reason that's a little bit of is because that is the one stratagem we have where you get movement coming out from underground, which translates to pretty reliably making your unit get that charge. It's D6 inches or shoot. So the shoot's nice, and I'll talk about where else you should probably consider using that. But the D6 movement, so your aberrants pop out, they're 9 inches away. They have +1 to charge from the Calamitous. They have +1 to charge from the Vigilus if you really want to. And now they're moving D6 towards them. So even if you roll a 3 or 4, it's a guaranteed charge. So, would you use this on him? Would you? Because that's the wording of it too. Yes, it costs 0, but he doesn't just get it. You're still using the stratagem. You're just not paying for it, which means you then can't use that stratagem elsewhere in that phase. So, a little bit of a letdown, in my opinion, that way. He has the Sanctus Biodagger, which is 1 damage, or strength 1, -2, 2 damage, but always wounds on a 2+ unless they're a vehicle or Titanic. That's okay. And his familiar's got his little claws. He can take a Silencer Sniper Rifle, range 36, heavy 1, strength 4, -1, D3 damage. On a 6 roll, it does 1 mortal wound. But if you do any damage at all to a Psyker, they auto-perils. They just take a peril result, which is pretty darn cool. So to remind you, the weapon does D3. If you roll a 6, you're doing 1 mortal plus D3 and they perils. AKA you're one-shotting 95% of the Psykers in the game. They don't get cover, and the weapon is only -1. But there is also a relic sniper rifle that is +2 to wound. So all of a sudden you're hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. They don't get cover. It's -1, D3, maybe +1 mortal, and then they perils. That's all really, really cool. I will tell you that I took him in practice in a lot of my lists because I thought that sounded really, really awesome. But I find, at least in 8th edition, it's just that kind of common, the more dice you have to roll to get something to happen, and if your opponent gets to roll basically any dice at all as well, more often than not, the results are incredibly lackluster. So D3 damage can be 1. Not rolling a 6 is immortal. They perils but take 1 mortal wound. All of a sudden you did 2 damage. And that's assuming they fail the -1, which everyone's going to get like at least a 5. Maybe a 6 if it's a guardsman psyker or something weird like that. Yeah. How much does the model cost? Well, he's the Sanctus, he costs 55 points. And that is how much he costs. So if he was closer to, if he was 40, yeah, that'd be really cool. Because again, they're not spammable. You're not going to take 3 detachments to get 3 Sanctuses out there. I will remind you the Jackal Alpha is also the sniper rifle. So then you start to think, does this army have a bunch of snipe in it? It's these 2 guys. Or gals. And again, you could take 3. You could take 3 detachments and have 1 in each detachment, I guess. But I think that there are more interesting ways to spend your time and your points. The auto psyker thing is cool. And at 55 points, I would say he's not so terrible that, the model makes no sense at all. He has a 3-up save in cover, which is nice. And like I said, he ignores cover. So there's definitely something to that. I would have taken the variables and I would have upped it a little bit. His sniper rifle being heavy 1, I would have loved that to be even heavy 2 or heavy D3, which is a lot of damage. But again, there's so many checks against it. You're going to roll that 1. You're going to wound. You're going to fail to wound. They're going to make a save. And you only get to shoot this guy 6 times at most. So for me personally, I think it's a little bit of a pass. That being said, Jeff's going to own 2 or 3 of those models because they're incredible. And I will practice them a whole bunch. And maybe I will find I'm completely wrong. But guys, get in here. Okay? Put up your boots. Put your hat down. Take your handkerchief, what is the cowboy hand, the cloth, take it off your face. This guy is one of my absolute favorite things to come out of Games Workshop in a long time. I am so happy. The model is so bold and funny, but at the same time not funny, dark and cool. He literally has half his face covered up like an actual gunslinger. I don't know what a Kellermorph is. It sounds cool though. He's either called a Kellermorph or a gunslinger, which is reminiscent of Dark Tower and these really cool things that I really, really enjoy. This model, you will have for sure 1, but I would argue 2 in each of your lists. And they have to be in 2 different detachments, but do it. So the Kellermorph, movement 6, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 2, strength 3, tough 3, wounds 4, attacks 3, leadership 8, save 5+. He has the Liberator Auto Stub, which is range 12, pistol 2, strength 4, -1, 2 damage. And then he has a Cultist Knife because he's just a badass, so why not? Gunslinger. This model can target enemy characters even if they are not the closest enemy unit. In addition, each time this model hits an enemy with a pistol weapon, it can immediately make one additional hit roll against that target using the same weapon. These bonus hit rolls cannot themselves generate any further hits. He's got 3 pistols with 2 shots each. That's 6 shots hitting on Blitzkill 2. Very often that's plus 5, 6, or 4 additional hits. So all of a sudden this 6-shot gunslinger becomes 10, 11, 12. And then there's a relic pistol, which you're going to take every time on one of them, which is actually 3 shots, and it's -2, 2 damage. And that one rerolls to wound or something. We'll get to that in the relics. But the point is, this guy puts him out, and he can target characters. It's incredible. Heroic deeds, heroic inspiration. If this model kills any enemy models with its ranged weapons, then until the end of the phase, reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by friendly Colt infantry units while they are within 6 of this model. That takes your neophytes, and again, puts them somewhere in the ballpark. I mean, they're rerolling 1s to hit. You should put the Kellermorph like behind them. He's a character. He's not super durable with only a 5+ invul and tough 3. So you're right. Your hope would be that they can't get to him in that one turn. And if that's the case, then he's buffing the guys and he's shooting again with his pistols, which is just reducing characters to ash. Absolutely in love with him. He's got a 5+ invul. What I very often find is the best way to play him is drop him down in range of soft characters, obviously, but take the time to put one of the pistols into, 2 scouts or two guardsmen, just to kill a model or 2, so you get that reroll 1s on your additional shooting. He's also a good candidate for the perfect ambush. It's a 3 command point stratagem. Like I said earlier, it's our only one that gets us D6 movement towards somebody, but it also allows you to shoot twice. So if he drops down and uses the perfect ambush strategy, he can basically kill 1 or 2 characters or decimate a unit of something, give reroll 1s, and then in the next shooting phase, he gets to do it again. In practice, at strength 4 and hitting on 2s and very reliably getting somewhere between like 9, 10, and 11 hits, I find him to kill pretty hardy targets. Obviously, at strength 4, you're not shooting a knight. You probably shouldn't shoot tanks, but, name the characters. If they're tough 5, if they're tough 4, and hell, if they're below tough 4, sayonara, they're gone. It's just a really cool thing. And the thing about him that I love is you'd be like, well, he's got to be expensive. No, he's not. The Kellermorph is 60 points. 60 points for all that. If he survives after a turn, you can, for 1 command point, return him to the Shadows, I think is what it's called, where he just basically goes back into Cold Ambush. Obviously, don't do that in the last turn because he'll count as destroyed, but otherwise, he can pop up somewhere else again and do it again. And it's highly mobile. With that many shots and that many hits, he's very good at removing scouts, removing rangers, removing guardsmen, nurglings, all that kind of stuff. That's obviously the less sexy targets, but that is something that he can do. What I like him for is, generally speaking, a Colt Ambush army shows up, and it has like the Clamavis, the Patriarch, Primus. These bubbles are huge. There's like all these units right here, and it kind of stretches out around your opponent. You're going to want a Kellermorph or 2 somewhere in that vicinity, because what they do is add reroll 1s to shooting after they kill something, but then also they're just they're just huge damage output. So if they can't get to them, they're going to make your opponent feel it for only 60 points a pop. So cannot say enough good stuff about him. Absolutely love the fluff, love the lore, love the model. They put it in the Kill Team box, which is great value in that it comes with some cool terrain, and if you're playing Kill Team, you're going to love it anyways. But I'm getting 2 of them. I'm going to have 2. The argument I would make to not have more than that is because you're going to want to Colt Ambush them and have them come in from underground. And you can only do that on turn 2, and you can only do that on turn 3. If you do it after that, he's dead. So would I start with a Kellermorph on the table? You could, and at 60 points, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but at only range 12, I just think you're not getting anywhere near the value out of that. So do 2 of them. Have 1 come in turn 2 and 1 come in turn 3. And unless your opponent has not that many characters, or I don't know, he or she protects them really well, maybe. Otherwise, this is your assassin. This is the guy that drops down and decentralizes your opponent in a beautiful Beautiful kind of way. Now we go to the Nexos. This is also an auto take. So we got the Clamavus, the Kellermorph, and the Nexos. Maybe the Patriarch and maybe the Abominant that I'm telling you you have to have in all your lists. And that's without saying the Primus and the Magus are also probably auto takes. These are all auto takes as far as I'm concerned. Which normally I would expect people to be like, Jeff, you're wrong. I know you're good at this game, but I disagree. I don't think any of you are going to disagree with me. I think maybe on the Abominant, but maybe on the Patriarch, but otherwise, yes, it's auto takes. The Nexos. This is the guy that they showed the picture of. He's the planner. He's 50 points. Guardsman stat line with 4 wounds, so he's movement 6, weapon skill 3, plus skill 3. I mean, he's got better than that. Strength 3, tough 3, 3 attacks for reasons unknown. Leadership 8, save 5 plus. He's got an auto pistol. Strategic coordinator. After this model has been set up on the battlefield, you can select one of your ambush markers that is on the battlefield and remove it before setting up again anywhere that is wholly within your deployment zone in more than 12 remaining models. So it's just a little bit more subterfuge. We talked about this at the beginning of the Codex review. Not the most amazing thing, but a little, hey, whoa, and your opponent's like, what are you doing? You're like, it's the Nexos, bro. You're mostly taking him for this. In addition, if your army is Battleforged, roll a 1d6 each time. Listen, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Here's what it is. On a 6+, you get a command point back for spending or your opponent spending a stratagem. Or, if you have a Primus or a Clamavus, which, as I said, you should, you get +1 to those rolls. So it's on a 5+. It's +1 for either one, so you're not getting to a 4+. I'm not saying that. On a 5+, if your opponent spends a stratagem, you get a command point back. If you spin a stratagem, you get a command point back. I guess I should read if it was a command point you spent. In addition, if your army is each time either player spins a command point. Okay, so that's what I was reading for. It doesn't say for every command point. So you're not, if they use a 3-point stratagem, you're not rolling 3 dice. You only roll the 1. And of course, this is limited like everybody else, where once per turn you get 1 command point back. But pretty reliably, what the Nexos means here, as long as you don't lose the Primus and you don't lose the Clamavus, and even if you do, you can still get command points back. You're looking at getting 5 or 6 command points back throughout the game with this one character. The reason I like the Nexos is that it's a cheap character that can sit back on objectives as well, and then it gives this big buff of stratagems, and you're going to want your command points. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want it. If you're looking at me and you're saying, nah, man, I wrote a battalion, and then I've got this auxiliary thing, and I've got, a spearhead, I'm going into the game with 7 or 8 command points, and that's all I need. No, it's not. You should be at least 2 battalions, but I would tell you it's 2 battalions and a spearhead, or 2 battalions and a patrol, not a patrol, something. You should be in the ballpark of at least 14 command points with a good Genestealer cult list, and you will know why soon. The Biophagus, really, really cool model, really interesting abilities. Not an auto take in my book. Again, we're in that variable department, so let's take a look at the cost. The Biophagus is also an elite, and it costs 35 points, which is pretty inexpensive. It has the Injector Goad, which I don't think costs anything. Nope, it doesn't. So it's 35 points, which is pretty inexpensive. It's not that big of a deal. I found that my Genestealer cult lists were really tight. I didn't have a lot of points floating around, but I did do things like add saws, and I had a couple of demolition charges, that kind of stuff. So you could trim it down pretty easily, or just drop a Genestealer, and all of a sudden you have a Biophagus. So that's something to kind of consider. The flip side of this on the competitive side is you're already at like 7 characters just stock. You just have to. Adding a Biophagus here, adding a Jackal here, and you're all of a sudden at like 10 characters. So if you are a competitive player, you do need to think about it in that term, in those terms, excuse me, because that could be, you're just like absolutely giving up kill points. You're absolutely giving up Headhunter and those kind of things without even your opponent even like having to think about it. So it's kind of, it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't things. Stat line's pretty normal. Movement 6, weapon skill 3, blue skill 3, strength 3, tough 3, wounds 4, attacks 3, leadership 8, save 5 plus. That seems to be kind of the fit body of the the Genestealer cult people that come out to do some leadership stuff. Genomic enhancement. This model can enhance one friendly cult aberrant unit, that is also the abominant, that is within 1 inch of it at the end of each of your movement phases. Roll a d6. On a 1 model from that selected unit is slain. Then roll a d3 and refer to the table below to see what bonus the survivors gain for the rest of the battle. A unit can only be the target of its ability once per battle. And there's no way around that. There's no stratagem. There's no anything. On a d3, so for a 1, you get +1 strength. 2, you get +1 toughness. 3, you get +1 attack. Listen, all of that's awesome. I'm not going to tell you that any of that's bad, and you do it to an aberrant unit, that's awesome. You do it to the abominant the next turn, cool. For 35 points, you just buffed them both up. So it'll be in lists, and it will very well be in some of mine. What I found to be the problem was more often than not, the Biophagus appears, the Aberrants appears, the Abominant appears. These 1 or 2 make their charge. The Biophagus like absolutely doesn't. And even if it did, what are you doing? It is at the end of your, or it's in the movement phase, so you will get the buff off. So like I said, I'm not trying to poo-poo this too much. If you get the Biophagus in your list, you absolutely will get one of these things. For 35 points, it's not that expensive, so I'm really not trying to talk this down too much. I just found that it was one of the first things I trimmed from my list, is honestly all I'm saying. But that being said, the dream of like a strength 22 abominant is something that I hold very near and dear to my chest, and the Biophagus is one of the ways to get there. It also has it can, for 12 points, take the Alchemicus Familiar. What I don't like about this is it's just a familiar, except you get to roll 2 dice and take the choice that you want once per game. 12 points once per game, roll 2d3 and take the result you want. Not both, just the one result you want. Yeah, I would have made the familiar like 15 points or something and said you get both results. And then people would be like, but Jeff, what if that's +2 strength to an abominant or an aberrant? So what? Is the game broken? Do people like, well, the meta was normal until people started taking that Biophagus with the 2d3, and all of a sudden nobody can win. It's all Genestealer cult everywhere. I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason I'm being kind of silly right here is because I think the converse is going to be true, which is, are you ever going to see a Biophagus with his little friend for 12 points, and all it does is make the roll once per game maybe more reliable? Because it doesn't even say reroll the result if it's the same. It's just literally roll 2d3, and you get to pick which one you want. Anyways, I love you, GW. Hope you appreciate the video too. Let's get to the Achilles Ridge Runners. This is the Dune buggy I was referring to earlier. I think this is an incredible model. I love it. It's so, so, so cool. And I also think this is pretty darn close to being really good and usable. That sounds more severe than I mean it to sound. What I'm trying to say is I don't think it's auto-take. In fact, all the lists that I wrote had none of these in it. But I can see an argument being made for it, and it's pretty cool. It's just a little bit weird in the hit or miss category. So it's fast attack. It's 50 points, which is pretty inexpensive. It's got 8 wounds. It's only toughness 5, and it has a save of a 4+. But the 8 wounds is nice. It moves 14 inches. Weapon skill 6, bliss skill 4, strength 5, leadership 7 for some reason. But it comes with each model is equipped with 2 heavy stubbers, a heavy mining laser, and a flare launcher. So the flare launcher is a model that's equipped with a flare launcher. Roll a d6 each time it loses a wound. On a 6, that wound is not lost. In addition, once per battle, at the start of your movement phase, you can select one friendly Colt biker unit within 6 of that model. That unit moves an additional 6 if it advances this phase. No dice roll is necessary. So here's what I find funny about this wording, by the way. And I'm just going to put it out to you guys. Select a friendly biker unit within 6 of that model. That unit moves an additional 6 inches if it advances this phase. No dice roll necessary. So the way I read that is you roll to advance, take your advance, and then because you advanced, you now move an additional 6 inches. And it just says you don't get the dice roll for that. I think a lot of you are going to nod your head and say, that's exactly what it says, Jeff. I know. But I also think people could read that and say, instead of rolling the dice for your advance, you just auto go 6, because there's a ton of units in this game that's exactly what they mean. It's not game breaking one way or the other, but it's kind of funny because it could actually be advanced and then also 6 more inches. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. The heavy mining laser, we haven't talked a whole lot about. It's range 36, heavy D3, strength 9, -3 D6 damage. So it's pretty decent. But it's heavy, and it's on a vehicle that is ballistical 4. So if it moves at all, it's hitting on 5s. Let me make sure. Anyways, it's got other rules here. It explodes. Spotter. If a model has a spotter, increase the range characteristic of its weapons by 6. That's kind of cool. Survey auger is something it has to take, I believe. They don't receive the benefit of cover. Scout vehicle, it gets to move 9 inches before the game starts. So no, it doesn't have anything that stops it from moving and shooting heavy weapons. I believe one of the Colt detachments negates that, but even then it's hitting on 4s. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, yes, you can use like the Jackal Alphas to get to hitting on 3s. This is kind of what I was talking about. Heavy Stubber, by the way, is just the 2 of them combined is strength 4. It's 6 shots in total. So again, 50 points. That's pretty inexpensive. It flies around at 14 inches. It can advance, so it's great for all that. It's got a lot of wounds. The 6-up feel no pain essentially means it probably gets 1 wound back, so it's closer to 9 wounds. It's really not bad. It's kind of like when your friend sets you up on a blind date and you get to the door of this person you haven't even seen or met yet, and they show up and you're like, hi, this will be fun. And they're like, this will be fun. And the 2 of you go on a date, and then you hug at the end, and you say, I hope you had a good time. And they say, I hope you had a good time too. And then you close the door, and you never see them again. I don't think anyone puts 3 Ridge Runners down on the table, and your opponent goes, Ridge Runners? Oh no! And you're like, yeah, that's right. But wait, there's more. In my detachment, they can actually move and still hit you on 4s. And your opponent's like, 4s? Yeah, it's half the time. I mean, if you're not careful, we're talking about shooting you 1, 2, maybe 3 times with a heavy mining laser. And assuming you fail 1 or 2 of those saves and I roll something like a 4 or 5 for damage, you're taking a little bit of damage from these puppies. Their best selling point is that they're only 50 points and they're fairly hardy, like I was saying. The problem I have with that in the Genestealer Colt army is I feel like it's a very similar role that other things do better and maybe more inexpensively. The durability is kind of nice, but only kind of, right? Like you can actually take Chimeras, which are more defensive, by quite a bit, and they are very similar in cost, and they actually have capacity to carry troops in them as well. So you would take them as shooting platforms. It does up the range of the mining laser to 42 because they have spotter. The heavy mortar is kind of cool. It's a D6 strength 5. It's a -1 damage. Range 48, but with this, it's 54. So there definitely is uses for them, and that's all pretty okay. I just find them, and this is normal. Not every Codex has every unit hitting it out of the park, but they're just kind of, You don't take them to kill a knight. This is not your heavy weapons platform. You don't... They're not putting out a tremendous amount of DACA. They don't have any close combat to speak of. They're hitting on 6s. That's it. That's it. And you have to pay for the heavy mining laser too, by the way. So they actually go up from 50 points. Atlan Jackals. Now, guys, it's so important for me to say this at this point in time. Let me spend a minute here. These models are phenomenal. Games Workshop is absolutely killing it. They are so cool. In the preview video, coming up on the Skitarii and about to run them over the motorcycle, amazing. A guy popping a wheelie holding a laser axe. Guys, you've got my interest. I'm here. If you work at Games Workshop and you're a friend of mine, please take this time to go brew a mug of tea. Get yourself some crumpkins. What do you guys do? I think you guys play polo. I think you guys play a lot of polo, maybe cricket. Go take a minute, please. Give me a minute here to be pretty honest. This unit is horrible. They are terrible. These are guardsmen on dirt bikes for a few more points doing exactly what guardsmen on dirt bikes would do. What do you mean by that, Jeff? Well, they move 14, their weapon skill 4, bliss skill 4, their strength 3, toughness 4 on the bike, 2 wounds on the bike, 1 attack, leadership 7, or 8 with the sergeant. And you're like, well, that's weird, but, you know, they can take stuff, right? Yeah, they can take stuff. If you want to up the cost of this unit, you can start doing things like adding a range 12 flamer. It's a heavy flamer. That's kind of cool. You can put a mining laser on there. Of course, they're hitting on 5s if they move at all. They can take an improvised weapon. Jeff, that sounds badass. What is that? It's nothing. It's actually nothing. They can take a shotgun. They can take a pistol. You can give them a power pick, which is strength user, which is 3, which is -2 D3 damage. They can have blasting charges. Well, Jeff, I mean, they have to be equipped with cool stuff then, right? Like, I know they can take those things, but each model is armed with an auto pistol, a blasting charge. And each Adelan Wolf Quad is also equipped with a heavy stubber. They are worse than guardsmen at stock. They're worse than guardsmen. I would have loved for something like this to be on the charge. You do like each model does D3 mortal wounds to the unit on a 4 or something, because you're literally hitting them with a motorcycle. Make them have an improvised weapon stock, but each improvised weapon is +1 strength, or at least -1 armor, or 2 damage, something. Why? Why am I taking Adelan Jackals? And I'll tell you what, I hope I eat crow. I hope someone's like, Jeff, it's so plain as day. This is why you take them. In their special rules, let me read that for you. Skilled Outriders, -1 to hit. Cool. If you do hit them, they have a 5-up save in their tough 4. How much do they cost? They have to be 6 points, right, Jeff? 6 points. Adelan Jackals are 10 points. The Wolf Quads are 15. So 10 points is not bad. I think in their minds when they're writing this, it's like jump troops they're kind of saying. They're going to fly around in packs of 10 guys. 10 guys put 10 auto pistols on somebody. Hitting on 4s, wounding most things on 5s or 4s, I guess. That's if they're shooting a Eldar farmer. They don't, like, they're not even special troops. They should have 2 attack space. Something. There's got to be something here. There's nothing. So what this unit does is it flies around and grabs objectives. They could jump on top of a 5-man scout unit and maybe win. I think they might. But it would, like, be kind of close. And how many of these guys did you take to take on those 5 scouts? Because if you took 10, that's 100 points. Actually, with the Jackal or the Wolf Quad, it's 100 and I don't know. I'm not gonna do math right here, but I'm so sorry, guys. I know that I'm overly negative sometimes, and I'm also wrong sometimes. It's such a missed opportunity. These guys could have been something cool, but this is in an army where I show up 9 inches away from you anyways, and then after I obliterate your face, which is what I'm hoping to do, then I have Genestealers that are moving like 17, 16 inches on average in a twisted helix attachment. So what do these guys do for me? They should have had some kind of rule of disruption, like they can target a unit and they harass it and it's -1 to hit. Something sexy, something cool. Because as it is right now, I'm going to own double of all these models. I'm going to have them painted beautifully by a super talented artist. And I'm going to love the models. And I'm going to put them in lists because I just have to. They're so cool. They look amazing. I know a lot of you guys are going to kit bash the crap out of them. But the rules are a giant whiff. And again, in the comments, let me know. If I'm wrong, if you think you can make these guys work, do it. Okay? And I apologize for being so negative. Moving on. We're into the Brood Brothers stuff. I'm actually not really going to cover these at all because they're exactly the same. Colt Armored Sentinel, Colt Scout Sentinel, exactly the same from the others. Just remember you can't use them any differently. Colt Lehman Russ, exactly the same. I'll give kind of a, and then you have the Brood Brothers Heavy Weapons Squad. I took some of those on my list because, again, clearing chafe is really important. But man, hitting on 4s with no rerolls available to you and wounding on 3s or 4s for most things with variable shooting. I'm gonna look for other ways to clear chafe pretty quickly, and I'll talk about that when we get to the list building stage. So just kind of overlay this stuff right here. Do Lehman Russes work well in a Genestealer cult list? Yes. The toughness 8, the long-ish range shooting, the anti-armor, that's all pretty nice. It's not super amazing, but the fact that Lehman Russes aren't that expensive, are very tough to kill. I find that it synergizes really well with Genestealer cult lists because, like, the big thing that Genestealer cult lists can worry about is too much DACA and horde clearing, which unfortunately right now, because of orcs, more people are going to gear towards killing hordes, and because the Castellan, lists that typically aren't horde lists are kitted out closer to being horde lists because of the Castellan, which brings me to the other reason why the Colt Lehman Russ has a tough time. It's because it's not 5 dudes with a t-shirt on. The Castellan, if it's looking at a list of Genestealer Colt, it's like, oh, thank you for picking my targets for me. Wha-bam! Wha-bam! And it just kills Lehman Russes. Speaking of things that would have a tough time, Goliath Rock Grinder. This is also mostly untouched from the index. Key points being it's like tough 7, wounds 10. Its close combat's pretty sick. It is 6 attacks base when it's untouched, but it gets D3 more at strength 9, minus 2 D3 damage. That's pretty cool. I'm not going to hate on that at all. Its weapon skill is only 4+, but again, that's pretty decent damage. My problem with the Rock Grinder is it's not free. It's 78 points, but you got to pay for its weapons, so like a heavy mining laser and a drill dozer blade, that kind of stuff. It comes out closer to, I believe it's like 95, or it's kind of up there. It does have a transport capacity of only 6 though, but if you're doing like 5-man aberrant units, it's kind of cool. You could put 5 acolytes in there, and they could have a couple of saws. So it's kind of like a delivery system for that. That's all okay and good. These guys can be in your list, but I would tell you that if you're flying from Florida to the LVO or something like that, and you're hoping to take a list that goes 4-2 or 3-3 and does really well or something like that, you probably don't have Goliath Rock Grinders in there, unfortunately. They have cool things, like they have a 6-up Feeling the Pain. You can put a Demolition Cache in there, so that's kind of nice. They're fun. They're awesome models. I own 3, like I said. Unfortunately, they're probably 20 to 30 points too much. And a common issue that does exist throughout Warhammer, but more in particular this Codex, I find, there's just other things that do their same job better. The Goliath truck is the more inexpensive version. This has a worse save. It's 1 less toughness, and it transports 4 more guys. It also doesn't have the... Oh, no, it does have the 6-up Feeling the Pain. So it's just basically the same thing, just a little bit worse and a little bit more inexpensive. I find it has similar issues, though, where it's like if you were ever going to take a Goliath truck, I'd probably just take a Colt Chimera anyways. Yeah. Colt Chimera, it is just a Chimera, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it is toughness 7, 10 wounds. It does have Colt Ambush, smoke launchers, so you can do the -1 to hit on it, and it explodes, but it also transports 12 Brood Brothers infantry models. Each Brood Brothers weapons team... Is that interesting? Brood Brothers infantry. So it specifically says Brood Brothers infantry, but it also has faction keywords, Genestealer Colt. So I think you can also transport aberrants and stuff like that, right? Am I reading that correctly? If it says... I don't know. I don't usually do transports. My armies are Tyranids, Custodes, Adeptus Mechanicus, and Genestealer Colt, which kind of funny saying that right now, and Knights. None of those guys really deal with transports. They will in the future. Some of them will. But yeah, I don't know. I'll let you guys kind of inform me on that. I don't want to spend too much time stabbing into the darkness when we've already done... This is like a 2-hour video already or something crazy like that. And we're not even close to being done. Then there's the Tectonic Frag Drill terrain piece. It's not good. It's not bad. And it's not great. But it's really cool. It's a gorgeous piece of terrain. It is a pretty close to functioning in a list piece of terrain that does help you. Unfortunately, its rules are that it allows you to add a unit into Cult Ambush if they're within one of it if they're within 3 of it and more than 1 away from an enemy. And then it does a drill thing where it deals out like mortal wounds. On a 4+, they suffer D3 mortal wounds between 2 points on the field. That's pretty cool. But I think the way that list building happens in 8th edition means that this piece of terrain is too costly in that way. So it's 75 points, I believe, or 70, which is great. That's not that expensive. But it takes up a whole detachment. If you take this, it is 1 whole detachment. And in and of itself, again, like I said, it's okay. So you're adding terrain to a table, so that's kind of nice for Genestealer Cult. It's nice for anyone. The ability to throw a unit into ambush is useful. I would just say that the units that are near this to get back into ambush are not your aggressive units, or it's kind of a weird late game situation. So it's a little bit more niche in its roles those ways, which means that, yes, it has potential and utility, but you're spending points and a detachment for something that may or may not come up, which is hard to justify. And then its damage output is cool. It does seismic tremors and it does the seismic quake. Those are all nice. But there's, I don't know. It's okay. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. I guess, all right, you know what I'll do? I'll read the rule. Because I guess you guys probably haven't seen this yet. Activate the drill. If a model from your army is on a tectonic frag drill at the end of your movement phase, and there are no enemy models on it, you can activate the drill. If you do, first roll a d6 for every unit on the ground level that is within 3 inches of the tip of this model's large drill. On a 6, that unit immediately suffers d6 mortal wounds. Then roll a d6 adding 1 to the result for each other time the drill on this model has been activated during the battle. If the total is less than 6, the seismic tremors result below takes effect. On a 6+, the seismic tremors and seismic quake results below take effect. So each turn that you use it, you get +1 on it. So turn 1, you need to roll a 6 to activate the seismic tremors and seismic quake. Turn 2, it's a 5. Turn 3, it's a 4, so on and so forth. So again, there's some variable there. Seismic tremors, until the start of your next movement phase, subtract 2 from charge rolls made for units whilst they are within 12 of this model. This does not apply to units that can fly. Okay, -2 to charge, that's pretty cool. Within 12 of it. Seismic quake, draw a straight imaginary line 1 millimeter in thickness from any point of one battlefield edge to another in such a way that it crosses this model. Roll a d6 for every unit that this line crosses that is on the ground level. Do not roll for units that can fly. On a 4+, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So that sounds nice. And again, maybe there's a scenario where you hit 7 units and you roll 5 4+s and you do 2 or 3 mortal wounds to each one of them. In which case, yeah, that's amazing. More often than not, what's going to happen is you're hitting 1, maybe 2 units, and you are maybe rolling a 4+, and you're maybe rolling a 2 or 3 mortal wounder. And that's, again, only after you activate it, which you need a 7 to do, and you get +1 with each turn. Pass. All right, and that brings us to the war gear. There's not much I would tell you about this that we haven't already talked about. I think you take the banner with the acolytes. It rerolls 1s to hit. I think power picks on the aberrants are the way to go. I do like rock saws for your acolytes if you're using them. Demolition charges are an okay maybe. And then neophytes are interesting. Mostly, I think you keep them just auto guns. A unit of 20 puts out 40 shots. That's going to clear out some chafe, and that's fine. I personally have been using like mining lasers and some of those other things because I think it's cool. But because they're only supposed to go 4, and they're variable shooting, and they're not like high AP or high damage, I found the results to be pretty lackluster. And while they're not that expensive, those points elsewhere translate to pretty big things pretty quickly. It can be a whole nother biophages. It can be what allows you to put a locos in, that kind of stuff. So I found that to be true. All right. I told you guys it was going to be a long video. I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker here. This is a very important page. This is super exciting. And I want to talk about this a little bit. So this is the Cult Creeds. This is what I've been failing to describe as. I am absolutely in love with the codexes that have been rolling out from GW have been incredible. And this one is no... it's just another continuation of that, basically. Each Cult Creed is pretty darn good. There are some that stand out, obviously, but when I say some, I literally mean like 2 or 3. And what I really like about it is that they build very different lists, which is really, really fun. And this Codex asks that you build very different lists. Aberrants used to their high strength is cool. Genestealers used in a different way, very cool. Going for just mass hordes of neophytes and acolytes, there are different things that benefit them. And then if you were going to take the jackals, if you were going to take the bikes and the dune buggy, there's an entire detachment that makes them much more manageable. So it's very, very cool in that way. Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. Subtrain and ambushers. Until the end of the first battle round, add 1 to advance and charge rolls made for units with this Cult Creed. Starting from the second battle round, if a unit with this Cult Creed is set up on the battlefield, then until the end of that turn, add 1 to the advance and charge rolls for that unit. So the entire detachment gets +1 to charge. Again, Clamavus +1 to charge, and then Vigilus +1 to charge. All of a sudden, you have +3 to charge, and all you did was show up. That's a big, big deal. Now, of course, you're giving up some of these other buffs that we'll talk about in a second, but +1 to charge, +1 advance is a very, very big deal, and I will make a note. You guys haven't heard this yet, but you're going to have your socks absolutely blown out. The Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor has a stratagem for 3 command points. You get to turn off somebody else's attempt at a stratagem. Yes, that's right. You are getting the Vect ability in the Genestealer Cult. And I didn't misspeak. It's for 3 command points, not 4. So you're getting a more inexpensive, exactly the same otherwise version of that. We'll get to that in the stratagem section. But you're going to want to take a Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor because that is a game-changing, super powerful ability. And it comes to us cheaper. The Pauper Princes. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by a unit with this Cult Creed in a turn in which it made a charge move or was charged or performed a heroic intervention. Rerolling to hit in close combat. Not the sexiest, not the most thematic, but very good. Obviously, a huge part of this codex. Bro, I'm doing a codex review. Stop. Thank you. Bulldogs. But it's good. It's just really good. I think for me, it's just... I mean, I see people on Facebook and different groups that are excited about this. This is one of the cults that people already have their army painted for. That's good. It's rerolling to hit is insane, and it's one of the only ways to get that in this codex. By the way, there's not a whole lot of rerolls to hit, so that's pretty powerful. Good. The Hive Cult, Discipline Militants. If a unit with this cult creed fails a morale test, have the number of models that flee, rounding up. In addition, units with this cult creed can still shoot in a turn in which they fall back. But if they do so, you must subtract 1 from hit rolls. So we've seen this before. At first glance, it's not super amazing, but I will tell you leadership is a big, big deal. So if I was to take the Hive Cult discipline, I would be writing a list that has like 200 neophytes and 200 acolytes. I would go balls to the wall, mass bodies. They all have shooting, so you're using that as well. You're going to lose some leadership, so this is like where that makes sense. Almost in any other case, I would completely pass over the Hive Cult. The Bladed Cog. Listen carefully. All models with this cult creed have a 6+ invulnerable save. Models with this cult creed that already have an invulnerable save instead improve their invulnerable save by 1 to a maximum of 3. In addition, infantry models with this cult creed do not suffer the penalty to their hit rolls for moving and shooting heavy weapons. The moving and shooting heavy weapons is nice on the neophytes. The 6-up invul is insane. You're always getting a save no matter what. But +1 to your invul? What immediately comes to mind with this is a list with 60 Genestealers at tough 4 with a 4-up invul save. Everyone has a 4-up invul save. Everyone is flying around, and there are other ways to make them even better, but that's an incredible way to use that. And of course, there's other things too. All the characters have 5-up invul saves for the most part, so now they're 4-up invul saves. they become a whole lot more defensive. It's just, you can make a shockingly resilient Genestealer cult list, and that many Genestealers on a 4+ invul, really good. The Rusted Claw. When making saving throws, excluding invulnerable saving throws for a model with this cult creed, add 1 to the result if the weapon being used to make the attack has an armor penetration characteristic of 0 or 1. In addition, biker models with this cult creed do not suffer the penalty to their hit rolls for moving and shooting heavy weapons or for advancing and shooting assault weapons. So that's what you use for those jackals and the bikes. And the dune buggy, excuse me. So all of a sudden they become a 3-up save on the buggy. It becomes a 4-up save on the bikes. They can move and shoot their big guns. And now it makes sense a little bit more what you would do with them. I still don't like the issue of how, again, even with a 4-up save, -1 to hit, moving 14 inches, and shooting big guns, the unit's like fairly expensive, and they're still guardsmen. They're still hitting on 4s. Anyways, I don't want to poo-poo it too much. I think I'm well established as saying I'm a little bit nonplussed with that. And then here's my favorite, the Twisted Helix. Add 1 to the strength characteristic of models with this cult creed. In addition, add 2 to the advanced rolls for units with this cult creed. Add 1 to the strength. The Abominant, the Aberrants. Hell, Genestealers at strength 5. Surprisingly very good. Neophytes at strength 4. Pretty good. Acolytes at strength 5. Very good. Everyone with just +1 strength is huge. The Patriarch at strength 7 doesn't have as much of a big deal because mostly it's either... I mean, it's good against vehicles, I guess. For the most part, it is the difference between toughness 6 and 7 on the vehicle, but it's just awesome. I love it for my Aberrants, I love it for my Abominants, but it does make Genestealers just absolutely mulch Space Marines and stuff like that. They already kind of do, as I know what you're going to say, but much more so when they're wounding on 3s. So, just to reiterate again with those cult creeds, I think the big winner is you're going to want to take the 4-armed Emperor, if not your entire army being 4-armed Emperor, because again, +1 to charge in advance is just a big deal. I personally like the Twisted Helix. I don't even necessarily say that as this is absolutely the best one. I think Cult of the 4-Armed Emperor might be. But offensively, Twisted Helix is the better one for me. And then I always take a detachment of Cult of the 4-Armed Emperor because, again, you want multiple detachments, but also I want that stratagem. So that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Let's do the stratagems here. Clandestine Goals is 1 command point. It has something to do with tactical objectives. Mostly we don't play with that. Devoted Crew, 1 command point. Use a stratagem at the start of any turn. Select the Genestealer Cult's vehicle model from your army. Until the end of that turn, use the top row of its, it just exists at the top row. Cool. Lurk in the Shadows, 2 command points. Use a stratagem at the start of your opponent's shooting phase. Select the Genestealer Cult's infantry unit from your army that is entirely on or within any terrain feature. Until the end of the phase, enemy models can only shoot that unit if it is the closest unit that is visible to them. So that's a big deal. I had a game where a scenario was that I had a unit wrapped with a unit that was fully in cover like that. And then I had a unit on the... No, the unit on the outside had them wrapped. The unit on the inside didn't. I've made the unit on the inside lurk in the shadows, and then they just couldn't shoot him because, you know, the other closest unit was... in combat, so they just could not target him. Good way to keep your aberrants alive. It's situational, but in general, you want to put your army in cover anyways, and then this thing can come into play in ways that people didn't see coming. Monstrous Vigor. Use a stratagem at the start of your turn. Select an aberrant unit from your army until the start of your next turn. Add 1 to Bestial Vigor rolls for that unit. So it's 2 command points to make them have a 4+. Feel no pain. They came from below. 1 command point. Use a stratagem before you reveal an ambush marker. Select up to 3 units excluding vehicles from your army that are set up in ambush. For each unit that you select, remove 1 ambush marker from the battlefield. The selected units are no longer set up in ambush and instead set up underground as described in the Cult Ambush ability. So it's just another way to mislead your opponent and make them not know who's where or how they're coming in. An example would be taking 20 Genestealers and not setting them up underground. So your opponent thinks that your idea is to be charging out of your own deployment zone, keep them far away, and then when they deploy away from that because they're worried about you doing that, then you put them into underground and all of a sudden they're 9 inches away when you decide to come in. They came from below... Nope, already said that one. Meticulous Uprising, 1 command point. Use a stratagem before you reveal an ambush marker. Move up to 3 of your ambush markers up to 12 inches each. These markers cannot be moved within 9 of enemy models or outside your deployment zone. So still restricted by being in the deployment zone. Yeah, you guys can kind of read that. It's a little bit blurry. But you're moving them around. So nice things like shoving it up towards the front of your deployment, because you reveal them at the end of their movement phase if they're going before you, or during your movement phase, in which case it doesn't really matter. But you get to move 12 inches, so like you're up there, they can't come within 9, then you back up 12 behind cover or behind line of sight, and all of a sudden what they thought they could shoot at, they now can't. Kind of cool stuff like that. And it move blocks them as well. Brood Coven. 1 command point. Use a stratagem before the battle. If your warlord is a patriarch, select up to 1 Magus and up to 1 Primus from your army. Generate a warlord trait for each selected model. Note that these models are only regarded as your warlord for the purposes of these warlord traits. All 3 models must have a different warlord trait. This stratagem can only be used once per battle. So yes, I take a patriarch. I give him the Twisted Helix warlord trait, typically speaking, but I spend this 1 command point. And very often my Magus will be in my Four-Armed Emperor detachment. I'll give him the warlord trait that is unique to the Four-Armed Emperor, which is plus D3 command points and then a reroll. The reroll is hamstrung to only being used on Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor units, which I typically don't have that many cool stuff in that detachment. So that's whatever, but the plus D3 command points is a big deal. Like I said, command points are huge. I just spent 1 command point, and I'm guaranteed to at least get that 1 back, but maybe get an additional 1 or 2. And then the Primus can take a warlord trait, and one of the warlord traits is plus 3 to your aura. So he's got a plus 1 to hit aura to all Genestealer Cult units, make it a 9-inch bubble, and now all of a sudden everybody is in the club getting tipsy. I mean, hitting plus 1. Pretty cool, but there's other options as well. Hyper Metabolism, 1 command point, pick a character, D3 wounds back to him. Rig to Blow, 1 command point. Use a strategy when a Genestealer Cult's vehicle model from your army is equipped with a cache of demolition charges is destroyed. Don't roll, it just auto blows up. I wish it just said they auto blow up. The First Curse, 1 command point. Use this strategy before the battle. Select a Pure Strain Genestealer unit from your army and roll a d6 to see which effect applies to this unit for the duration of the battle. On a 1 or 2, each wound roll of a 6+ for an attack made is damage 2. On a 3 to 4, add 1 to advance and charge rolls. And you're going, Jeff, this is stupid how good it is. Well, wait a second. On a 5 or 6, you lose the swift and deadly ability, but gain a 4+ save. Now, at first glance, you're going, oh, a 4+ save is pretty good on a Genestealer, is it not? Maybe. Swift and Deadly is advance and still charge. So, that's a big deal. It's a big part of what makes Genestealers so good. If that said something stupid like, +1 save including invul or something like that, and then they could get a 3+ invul on the big detachment of Bladed Cog, maybe. The +1 to charge, again, like I was saying, we already talked about how you can get it to with a Clamavus, and they actually are not affected by the Vigilance, but with a Clamavus and a couple other things. Oh, Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, that's a 7-inch charge coming out of reserve. Now with this would be a 6-inch charge by itself. That's amazing. You're going to make a 6-inch charge. If you don't make it a 6-inch charge, you didn't deserve it anyways. So this is a little bit interesting for me. I've done it in a few of my lists, and I've rolled that 5 or 6 several times, and then I always re-roll it, but then it becomes a 2-point command stratagem. So it's just got some risk. I would hate to see someone at the end of a tournament really needing something else and instead hamstring the speed of their army pretty quickly. A Perfect Ambush. This is going to be used every time. This is the one. 3 command points. Infantry or biker, when they show up, they can move d6 inches after being set up, or they can shoot, and then they can still shoot in the shooting phase. This is the only one like this where you can still charge after that, and it's 1 stratagem. There's no warlord trait. There's no anything else that has this much of an impact. Obviously, if you roll a 1 or 2, then yes, there are other things that do something like that. But what I mean is you could literally move 5 or 6 inches towards them, coming out 9 away, and now it's a 3 or 4 inch charge. Or 5, it's a big deal, especially if you still have those pluses as well. 3 command points, worth it. Cult Reinforcements, 1 command point. Use a stratagem at the start of your movement phase. Select the Genestealer Cult unit from your army that has the troops battlefield roll. You can return up to d6 slain models to that unit, which with each set up in coherency and more than 1 inches away. So you heal D6 guys to troops. I like that it specified troop, because otherwise you're resurrecting aberrants, which is too broken. But yeah, you can get Genestealers back, and get Neophytes, Acolytes, that kind of thing. It's only 1 command point. D6 guys back, sure. Before it's even asked about reinforcements, no. This does not cost you reinforcements. You're just literally returning units that have been lost. So it's a way to heal them. Speaking of reinforcement points, Telepathic Summons, 2 command points. This is summoning only for Genestealer Cult, which in 7th edition was awesome because you actually did create a new unit, but in 8th edition, no. You would have to put a unit aside, or put points aside, to then summon units. Roll 3d6 under that, all that blah blah blah. It's terrible. Detonate Concealed Explosives, 2 command points. Use this stratagem at the start of your shooting phase. If any Genestealer Cult models from your army are on the battlefield, select an enemy unit on the battlefield and roll a d6. Subtract 1 from the result if the unit is a character, and add 1 if the unit contains 10 or more models. On a 4+, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. On a 7+, it suffers d6 mortal wounds. So it's 2 command points. On a 5+, you're hurting a character for d3 mortal. Kind of cool to finish them off. You know, if a guy's got 1 or 2 wounds left, you want to go for that Hail Mary. A 10-man unit on a 7+ takes d6. Return to the Shadows. This is your go back into Cult Ambush as long as you're not in combat. 1 command point. Scanner Decoys, 1 command point. Use a stratagem when you set up a unit from your army that has the Cult Ambush ability in an ambush. Place 4 ambush markers for that unit instead of 1. If you use a stratagem, then when you reveal, you pick up the other 3 that are not real. So it's just a way to kind of lie to your opponent. Lying in Wait. This is the 2 command point stratagem where you show up 3 inches away from your opponent, but you cannot charge. So again, very shooty, but it's a good way to arrest objectives away from your opponent and shoot the crap out of them or flame the crap out of them. Extra Explosives. Use the stratagem for a Genestealer Cult unit from your army is selected to shoot or fire Overwatch. Up to 10 models from that unit that is armed with grenades can throw a grenade this phase instead of only 1 model being able to do so. So the biggest deal there is that almost everyone has, what are they called? Blasting charges. Only strength 3, but it's grenade d6. So if someone charges, you know, a Neophyte unit or Acolyte unit, which I believe they all have blasting charges, all of a sudden it's 10d6. Is it worth writing home about? Not really, but you know, it's okay. And if you really want to be silly, take a big unit with like 5 demolition charges, and then use this stratagem. And now you're throwing 5d6 strength 8 minus 3 d3 damage. So again, we're not talking about breaking the game wide open, but we are talking about something very powerful. Overthrow the Oppressors. This is the Bladed Cog stratagem. These are the Invul guys. Use the stratagem before a Bladed Cog unit. It's 1 command point. Including excluding Genestealer units from your army is selected to fight in the fight phase. Until the end of the fight phase, each time you roll an unmodified hit roll of a 6 for an attack by a model in that unit, that model can immediately make an additional hit roll against the same target using the same weapon. These bonus attacks cannot themselves generate any more. If you are doing these attacks against a unit from the Adeptus Mechanicus... Oh no, it's a 5 or 6 against Imperium, and then it's a 4, 5, or 6 against Adeptus Mechanicus. So exploding 4s against Mechanicus, exploding 5s against Imperium, but it's unique to the Bladed Cog, and that's the Invul detachment. It's unfortunate it says do not count Genestealers towards this, because that would have been insane. Probably broken, is why they did it. But still, your Aberrants, your Acolytes, your Neophytes, all of them get pretty angry pretty quick. Grandsire's Gifts, that's the 1 command point or 3 for extra relics. You're going to take this almost every time, by the way. Drive-by Demolitions, the Rusted Claw. So this is the Biker detachment. Use a stratagem before a Rusted Claw Biker unit from your army shoots in your shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to hit and wound rolls made for attacks with that unit's grenade weapons. After this unit has resolved all of its shooting attacks this phase, it can immediately move as if it were a movement phase, but cannot charge this turn. It's only 1 command point, so that's pretty sick. It's too bad that it just says grenade weapons. So you can kit out a unit with some grenade launchers and give them. They all have grenades, that kind of stuff. Yeah, you can do some kind of cool things with it. But if it would have just said their attacks, their shooting attacks in general, I think this would have been insane. But probably too good for one command point. But the move, shoot, and then move again is pretty insane because it said you use it in the shooting phase and you move after. So you are moving, shooting, and then moving again. They move 14 inches. That's a lot. That's a lot of movement. Again, would I write an entire list around slightly better guardsmen moving 28 inches and pooping grenades on somebody? Probably not. A plan generations in the making. Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor Stratagem. This is your Vect that I was talking about, but I'll read the reading for you. 3 command points. Use a stratagem just after your opponent has spent command points to use a stratagem, but before the effects of that stratagem are resolved. Roll a d6. On a 1, your opponent's stratagem is resolved as normal. On a 2 through 5, your opponent's CPs are refunded, but the stratagem they were using is not resolved and cannot be attempted again this phase. On a 6, the stratagem they were attempting to use is not resolved, cannot be attempted again in this phase, and the CPs are spent are lost. The stratagem cannot be used if there are no Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor units on the battlefield, and cannot be used to affect stratagems used before the battle or during deployment. It's amazing. Vengeance for the Martyred, the Pauper Princess stratagem. So these are the guys that reroll all hits in close combat. Use the stratagem when an enemy unit destroys a Pauper Princess character model from your army. For the remainder of the battle, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Pauper Princess models when they target the enemy unit that destroyed them for 1 command point. So you get revenge. Okay. It just says character, which is nice. Because again, if you made a whole list of Pauper Prince stuff, there's a whole bunch of crappy characters that you will lose every single game, and you don't care. So you can just pop this stratagem and be like, whoever did it, we're coming after you. Because you're already rerolling to hit, and now you're +1 to hit. So you're very often hitting on 2s rerolling, which is insane. Chilling Efficiency, the Hive Cult stratagem. So this is the shooty guys with the mass bodies. 2 command points. Use a stratagem after a Hive Cult unit from your army has attacked an enemy unit in the shooting phase, and the attacks result in the enemy unit losing 1 or more wounds. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by other friendly Hive Cult units that target the same unit this phase. So this is one of the other ways to get +1 to hit. So again, we already have other ways to do that as well, like the Jackal Alpha. So now you could be getting your Neophytes hitting on 2s, and if you have a Killer Morph, you can have them rerolling 1s. So yeah, there's ways to make these lists pretty shooty. It's just, would you buy a bunch of Genestealer Cult to make a shooty list? But hey, here's the Twisted Helix one. Monstrous Bio Horrors, 3 command points. This is your Aberrant can swing again. And also, everybody within 6 must subtract 1 from their leadership. That's their enemy. So Aberrant keyword is also Abominant. Just keep that in mind. You're just fighting again. Okay. Psychic powers. God, this has been a long video, so I'm gonna Mass Hypnosis, we know. It's unchanged. It's amazing. Mind Control, we know. It's unchanged. It's amazing. I think, well, maybe it was a charge value of 6, but now it's 7, or maybe it always was 7. Just a great ability. And then Might from Beyond, unchanged, still a 7. Those are great powers. All 3 of them you cannot go wrong with. Mass Hypnosis and Might from Beyond are like the 2 big winners. The new ones, Psionic Blast. Psionic Blast, a warp charge value of 5. If manifested, select an enemy unit with an 18. Invisible to the Psyker and roll a 2d6. If the result is less than the highest leadership characteristic in that unit, it suffers 1 mortal wound. Otherwise, it suffers d3. It's kind of a smite. Psychic Stimulus. Psychic Stimulus has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select a friendly Genestealer Cult unit within 18 inches of the Psyker until the end of your next Psychic phase. That unit can charge even if advanced, though not if it fell back, and they always fight first in the fight phase, even if they didn't charge. If your opponent has units that have the same kind of rule, alternate based off of whose turn it is. Pretty darn good. That gets your Aberrants advancing and charging. Of course, you have to get a Psychic power off, so it's kind of like Onslaught for Tyranids, where it's like, you can do that, but if you fail it, man, do you feel weird. But it's good. But now, let's talk about Mental Onslaught. Mental Onslaught has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select an enemy model within 18 inches of that is visible to the Psyker. Each model then rolls a d6 and adds their model's leadership characteristic to that result. If your score is higher The enemy model unit suffers 1 mortal wound. If the selected model is still alive, you then repeat this process. Each player rolling a d6 and adding their respective leadership until either the selected model is destroyed or you fail to inflict 1 mortal wound. There are other psychic abilities like this, I know. So why is Jeff flipping out so much right now? Well, you take a Genestealer cult army, you give the Patriarch mental onslaught. He's leadership 10. You put a Clamavus next to him. He's leadership 11. You take a Tyranid detachment with a Neurothrope or whatever. You cast the Horror on, I don't know, an Imperial Knight. It goes from leadership 9 down to 8. Your Patriarch's at leadership 11. And then, if you want, if you can, you also put a Neurotrauma Rod next to the Knight. It has to be within 6, so it takes some doing. All of a sudden, the Knight's down to leadership 7. And you're at leadership 11. That would mean, in order to tie you, they would have to roll a 5, and you'd have to roll a 1. And only then. If they roll a 6, and you roll a 2, that would also cancel it out. If I roll a 3+, you are auto-taking a mortal wound, and only if I roll a 1 and you roll a 5, or if I roll a 2 and you roll a 6, or no, reverse that. Do you have a chance to cancel it? The likelihood of one-shotting a Knight is something in the ballpark of like 85% if this goes off. That's if you get them down to leadership 7 and you're at leadership 11. And there are actually other ways to do leadership stuff, and I'm sure you guys know better than me. But the kind of funny thing is, even on a 8 versus a 11, it's very likely you're doing quite a bit of damage to a Knight just by rolling d6s. Pretty darn cool. And that's a Knight that starts at leadership 9. There are other targets that I'm sure you can think of that very reasonably start off at leadership 8 or 7, like almost everything Tau, and then you kind of, just auto-kill it. Just straight up auto-kill it. Insane. Pretty insane. So, in all my practice games, I never got it to work, by the way. Yeah! But, in theory, it could be pretty great. Warlord traits. Focus of Adoration. Friendly infantry and bike units can perform Heroic Intervention within 6 of your Warlord. Shadowstalker, add or subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks that target your Warlord. Biomorph Adaptation, add 1 to your Warlord's attacks and strength characteristics. Born Survivor, reduce any damage inflicted on your Warlord by 1 to a minimum of 1. For example, if your Warlord fails a saving throw against an attack that inflicts 3 damage, they will only lose 2 wounds. Or you can put that on an Abominant, and then with its natural ability, you're reducing all damage by 2 to a minimum of 1. That's kind of funny. Alien Majesty. Add 3 inches to the range of your Warlord's aura abilities. Preternatural Speed. Your Warlord always fights first in the fight phase, even if they did not charge. If the enemy has units that charge or that have a similar ability, then alternate choosing units to fight with, starting with the player whose turn is taking place. You cannot select this Warlord trait for a Locus if randomly selected for a Locus that treat this result as a Biomorph adaptation instead. And then here's the Cult Creed specific ones. Four-Armed Emperor. Once per battle, if the Warlord is on the battlefield, you can reroll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, or saving throw made for a friendly Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor unit. In addition, if your army is Battleforged, roll a d3 before the battle begins. You gain a number of additional command points equal to that result. Hive Lord, the Hive Cult. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made with ranged weapons by models and friendly Hive Cult units. So that's the big horde shooting one, like I was saying. Pretty good. Within 6 inches of the Warlord. Bladed Cog, this is the Invul guys. After deployment, but before the first battle round begins, select 1 unit from your opponent's army. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Bladed Cog units whilst they're within 6 of your Warlord when targeting that selected unit. Yikes! That's really good. Just reroll wound rolls against that unit within 6 of the Warlord. That's shooting and close combat. That's amazing. The Rusted Claw. Each time you roll an unmodified wound roll of 6 in the fight phase for a model from a friendly Rusted Cog. Yeah, anyways. Or maybe Bladed Cog are the bike people. Yeah, I think that's that. I had it wrong. I think that's right. Rusted Cog units within its 6 of warlord, the armor penetration is reduced by 1. So if it's AP 1, it becomes 0. If it's AP 2, it becomes 1, etc. So that's kind of cool. It's a 6-inch bubble. Wait. No, I read that wrong. Each time you roll an unmodified wound roll of a 6 in the fight phase for a model from a friendly Rusted Cog unit listed within 6 of your warlord, the armor penetration characteristic of that attack is improved by 1. Okay. Kind of garbage. Pauper Princes. Add 2 to unquestioning loyalty rolls made when you fail saving throws for your warlord. Or when your warlord takes more wounds. Cool. Twisted Helix. Increase the damage characteristic of weapons other than Sacred Relics or the Cult of weapons modified with Sacred Relics of the Cult used by your warlord by 1. Alright. Again, that means that like my Patriarch is doing damage 1 plus D3 or 4 on a 6. If you want, at like 7 or 8 attacks, strength 7, rerolling to wound, you're talking about absolute savage damage. It kills most things. It's pretty cool. So now we get to the relics. I don't think I'm going to go through absolutely all of them. I'm going to talk about the ones that I have found to be absolute must-haves. For your Kellamorph, you will take the Oppressor's Bane. It's the same pistol with 1 extra shot, 1 extra rend. And this weapon can take... you can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with this weapon when targeting enemy characters, which you almost always are. So take one of the normal pistols, shoot a troop guy next to you, and take this one and another one and shoot a character. And you're rerolling to wound with this one, and it's an additional -1. You're going to drop that character almost every time. It's absolutely incredible. You definitely take that. Amulet of the Void Worm is add 1 to saving throws, and they cannot overwatch. That's pretty darn cool. I'll let your mind wander to where you can put that. Icon of the Cult Descendant is add 1 to strength with everything within 6. So that's one of the ways you would get +1 strength, but you do lose the Feel No Pain and the reroll leadership. This is kind of a cool one. Scourge of Distant Stars. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with the bearer's melee weapons. In addition, each time an enemy model targets the bearer with a melee weapon, and your opponent rolls an unmodified hit roll of a 1, the attacker's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So it's kind of like our own little suit of knives, but it does say unmodified, so there's not really any scary synergy to get going here where all of a sudden they're like, you're just taking mortal wounds forever. And the add 1 to your hit is kind of interesting because most of your beat stick warlord, well, most of your characters are hitting on 2s anyways. So who are you putting this on? I don't think it really has a great home for it. The gift from Beyond is the special Jackal Sniper Rifle. It's just this Jackal Sniper Rifle, but it adds 2 to wound, unless it's targeting a vehicle or Titanic. Sword of the Four-Armed Emperor is kind of cool. It can either go on a Locust, replacing their blades, or anyone with a Bone Sword. It's 4 additional -3 damage 1 attacks. So those characters have 4 attacks. Now we're talking about 8 attacks. What I don't like about this is that the Locust blades are damage 2 and already -3. So this would be 4 additional -3 attacks but only 1 damage, which is cool, but the Locust blades are better, so it's all right. Elixir of the Prime Specimen. I like this one. This is the Twisted Helix unique relic. Increase the attack, toughness, and wounds of the model by 1. So there's all kinds of, like I said, you can put that on your Abominant. And now he's 4 base attacks, 7 base strength, and 6 base toughness. Or you can put on the Patriarch. Toughness goes up to 6, wounds is 7, and attacks is 7. And there's more ways to get more. That's what I'm saying. So it's just like, this is one of the building blocks for getting them way up there. And then the Crouchling, a Patriarch or Magus can take it. It basically gives you +1 to cast, and 1 more power. It's just, it replaces your familiar and gives you +1 to cast, which is a big deal. And then an additional power, and it still has the same thing where you can cast 2 powers once per game. So guys, that is the Genestealer Cult Codex, and I want to take the end of this to kind of just talk about my findings in building lists and what I've kind of found to be true in that way. I will say that I've had a tremendous amount of fun handling this codex, and I have not had the models. The model release is the tipping point for me. They are gorgeous, they're unique, They're small characters with a lot of detail, so I think this is a thematically gorgeous type of list where you're not going to see a lot of that kind of thing. A lot of lists are built around like big centerpiece models or highly detailed large units. This is like a writhing, cool mass of just, improvised weaponry and stolen guard attire, and then the characters just look like these crazy mutant people coming out from the sewers that are leading this ridiculous thing. I love it. Um, I love the character that's throughout the codex as well. There's a lot of characters that basically do nothing but add support. I think this army, is going to be extremely good in the hands of a very good general. There are lists in codexes in the past where I don't think you necessarily have to be. Obviously, the better you are, the better you'll do with the list. But what I'm trying to say is like Dark Eldar, an amazing codex, not super tricky, not super technical, and very powerful. If you're putting 3 Ravagers into a unit and you're rerolling ones to hit and wound, you're probably doing a lot of damage. Some of these other codexes, knights are just tough to deal with, right? So yeah, obviously if you're a better general, you'll do more with them. But my point is with the Genestealer cult, I think this rewards you in a whole different way. If you can use the blip system to your advantage, if you can be very strong and smart about how central you are with your buffs, because a lot of these units will get +1, 2, or even 3 on the charge. If not, they're having to make a 9-inch charge, which we all know is less than 50%. So it's not impossible, but it puts you into the luckier category. And these units are not super durable. If you're not making those charges and you're sitting there for a full turn, you're very often getting absolutely obliterated. But that's where like mass hypnosis comes into play, lurking in the shadows, so you can make something have the character rules they can't shoot at that they were kind of counting on. And then you got to make those charges. That's why Perfect Ambush is in there, because if at least one unit of Aberrants or Genestealers is chopping down things, then very often you'll have other things to survive. At the list building phase, I have found myself allying in Tyranids and not Guard. Like I said, the kind of heavy-handed Guard doesn't help you as much as it used to. Turned me off to them, and I own a bunch of Guard. I think you still can incorporate them. I think they should be almost specifically command point batteries and then chafe clearing. Like that's all that they should do for you. Tyranids, I'm still liking having a unit of 6 Hive Guard because I think they're amazing. They'll absolutely remove 5 or 6 scouts, and they'll shoot twice. So they can very reliably clear like a couple of things, and then and they're good. Like Hive Guard are just good in general, anyways. And then I love having those Neurothropes so that I do have a little bit of a smite battery going on. 2 Neurothropes, a Magus, a Patriarch, at least. That's 4 guys that all can pretty happily cast smite. And that's a decent amount of smite as well. But also I like having access to horror for my Patriarch leadership bomb. If you're leadership 9 like you are in a knight, and I get all my things to go off, I can really do some damage to it. But if you're less than 9, if you're 8 or 7 like some of these armies have, I can auto kill you. And that's an amazing ability to catch someone off guard with. So horror is a big part of that. Also the -1 to hit goes a long ways in making this army more survivable because a lot of it's tough 3 or tough 4 with a pretty bad save. It's a great list. It's a great army. There's a lot of fun. It hits like a truck when it hits, but there is a lot of dice rolls involved. And if you make mistakes or you forget something or you leave yourself hanging out in the wind, you will get punished for it. I kind of like that. That's kind of, it fits what I enjoy about the game. I'm a little bit of a gambler, which is not to say that that's the safest way to play. It's not the most overt codex where it's like, this is clearly how you're going to play it. I can see people being Pauper Princes. I can see people being Twisted Helix. I can see them taking Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor. I can see you allying in a lot of Terrans. I can see you allying no Terrans. I can see it being pure Genestealer cult. I can see Guard in there. I can see no Guard in there as well. I could see 8 or 9 or 10 characters, and I could see 4. I do think that I also like that it rewards you with the stratagems as well. Having our own Vect is an incredibly tactical ability, but also it's very powerful. But it's also a stratagem heavy codex as well. You're gonna want to be doing a lot of things, and I went to the table with 15 or 18 command points a lot, and I came away like turn 2 with 5. It goes away very quickly. So it is what it is, and I'm sure as time goes on, I have more practice, I'll find myself managing that a lot better. But anyways, I am absolutely in love. I thought the preview video they made was incredible. Everything about this codex has been really fun. I'm excited for you guys to get your hands on it and to practice it and to come up with lists and ideas. And I definitely plan on taking Genestealer Codex, Cult Codex, excuse me, for a spin this year. I'm going to travel with it. I'm going to take it to a lot of tournaments, and I'm going to hopefully see how well I can do with it. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts. This is a long video. I said a whole bunch of stuff, so let me have it. If you enjoyed it, please do consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I'm also on Twitter at iNcontroLTV, and I stream on Twitch at iNcontroLTV. You can see me commentating on behalf of Games Workshop on Warhammer TV for the Las Vegas Open, Adepticon, Nova, that kind of stuff. And then my own channel, I'll be doing some battle reports. I'll be doing more Codex coverage as it comes out. And then I'll probably just be doing some list stuff just to keep Warhammer content on my channel. All of which is made more possible if you support my gaming lifestyle by just following me along. And maybe subscribing on Twitch and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I will see you all very soon.